Chapter 1289. I don't know you. Yizichin hurried through the streets of heavenly God City. He couldn't help but look at the people walking on the street. Just now, just as he was about to push open the door, he clearly saw Lu Qing walk past from the corner of his eye. There was no way he was mistaken. He was certain that it was Lu Qing. That's why he gave up on entering her residence and ran towards the alley. However, by the time he reached the corner, Lu Qing was long gone. Where the hell did she go? By now, Yizichin had lost track of how many alleys he'd passed through. There was a sea of people, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find her. That pearl looks pretty good. Miss, you have a keen eye. This pearl was made by Master Qian. It's called the Divine Accumulation Pearl. If you wear it long-term, it can increase your affinity with divine power. This is our. You sell such a fine artifact in a shop like yours. Although the streets were bustling with activity, Yizichin still heard the conversation. He suddenly turned around and saw a young woman in a blue floral dress standing in a shop no more than 10 meters away. She held a crystalline pearl in her hand. If the Divine Accumulation Pearl really was as the shopkeeper said, it was an incredible divine artifact. Even if it wasn't sold at an auction, at the very least, it wouldn't be sold in a shop that was no more than a few dozen square meters in size. The shopkeeper, who'd been caught lying, looked somewhat embarrassed. He felt like this girl was the daughter of a wealthy family, inexperienced. He wanted to see if he could extort some money from her. Miss, what do you say? Why should I say anything? This is your product, so naturally you should be the one to bid. If I think it's suitable, I'll buy it. If not, I'll leave. That's all. 3,000 aureus. The shopkeeper gnashed his teeth. The young woman chuckled, then placed the pearl on the counter. Wrap this pearl up for me. The moment the girl put it down, a handsome young man walked over to her side. He'd thought his business was over, but now someone wanted to buy it? The shopkeeper didn't hesitate. He hurriedly ordered someone to wrap it up. This was just a decorative item. At most, it would emit a bit of cold air. However, this was just an ordinary item for cooling off. If he sold it for 3,000 aureus, he'd make a killing. Sir, your Divine Accumulation Pearl. The boss smiled apologetically and handed the bead to the young man. The young man took the bead and handed it to the girl beside him. Qing, this is for you. Senior brother Zhao, you should keep the treasure you bought for 3,000 aureus. As she spoke, she held up a folded umbrella in her hand, smiled faintly, and walked out of the shop without looking back. However, the moment she turned around, Yizichin saw the side of her face. Lu Jing. Yizichin ran over and grabbed Lu Jing's hand. The sudden tug caused the umbrella in her hand to fall to the ground. She turned around and the two of them stared at each other. Yizichin's eyes were filled with shock. He couldn't help but laugh. I'm here for you. 100 years ago, Yizichin had promised to go to the God realm to find her, but too many unforeseen events had occurred. Only now did he truly stand in front of Lu Jing. Yizichin believed that with their relationship there was no need for words. He reached out to hug her, only to see her expression gradually change from shock to fright, then to disgust. She yanked her hand out of Yizichin's grasp, took a few steps back and glared at him. Who are you? Those 3 simple words sent Yizichin plummeting into the abyss. He stared into Lu Jing's eyes, which were filled with confusion and bewilderment. He knew now. She was blaming him for coming too late. Well, that's right. He'd only come to see her after 100 years, and that was only because he'd followed the academy to the Battle of Geniuses and coincidentally met her. Yizichin knew just how precious 100 years was to a girl. All right, don't be angry. I know I'm late. How about I apologize? How about this? I've already connected to the God Realms network. I'll give you my phone and let you watch your favorite anime, okay? As he spoke, Yizichin also found a few movies that Lu Jing had saved in his phone. When she saw the screen, Lu Jing's eyes flashed with cold light. She reached out and slapped Yi Zichen across the face. Scoundrel! At the same time, the youth who'd spent a fortune on Lu Jing's pearls stepped between them and pushed Yi Zichen back several steps. Who are you? Lu Jing's slap completely stunned Yi Zichen. He gripped his phone lightly. Although the youth was blocking his view, his gaze was fixed on Lu Jing, who stood behind the youth. Lu Jing, what are you doing? Isn't this what you used to pester me to see when you were lying on my bed? On the bed? The youth's expression darkened. He glanced at the screen out of the corner of his eye. You're actually saying that Junior's sister would watch such an unsightly scene? Who are you? This has nothing to do with you. Hurry up and scram. Yi Zichen shoved the youth. The youth's gaze darkened, and a silver light appeared around him, forcing Yi Zichen back. Quite a few people on the street sensed that something was wrong. Quite a few of them had already begun to avoid the area. Men, beat him up. With that, 4 men appeared in front of the youth. From the fluctuations of divine power they radiated, quite a few bystanders could tell that they were Sky Supremes. Furthermore, the youth's attendants were Sky Supremes. It was obvious that his background was extraordinary. Lu Jing. Beat him up. Yi Zichen and the youth spoke at practically the same time. The attendants' gazes hardened, and they charged at Yi Zichen. Scram! The Sky Supreme level attendants posed no threat to Yi Zichen at all. With a wave of his hand, he slapped them all across the face. Their faces swelled up, and a few of their teeth fell out. Yi Zichen paid them no heed at all. He took one step at a time, then another. Stop right there. The youth reached out and patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder. Yi Zichen's expression darkened, and he grabbed the youth's arm. The instant Yi Zichen grabbed him, the youth sensed that his strength was extraordinary. Scram! Yi Zichen threw the young man into the middle of the street, then stopped around 10 meters away from Lu Jing with a confused look in his eyes. Lu Jing, are you done messing around? I don't know you, said Lu Jing sternly. Chapter 1290. Chapter 1290. Amnesia. Countless onlookers gathered on both sides of the street, including on the roofs of the shop. Yi Zichen yelled with all his might. He couldn't understand why Lu Jing would tell him that she didn't know him. He was certain that he didn't recognize the wrong person, whether it was his appearance, mannerisms, or aura. It was enough to prove that the girl in front of him was the little ghost girl, Lu Jing, who followed him desperately back then. She clearly looked forward to Yi Zichen coming to the God realm to find her, and she clearly said that she would wait for him. But why is she acting like she doesn't know him now? Lu Jing, I'm Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen roared angrily once again. Lu Jing, who stood in front of him, was stunned, while Yi Zichen's roar echoed through her mind. I'm Yi Zichen. I'm Yi Zichen. I'm Yi Zichen. The same words echoed through her mind. Lu Jing looked at him in shock. Emotions can't lie. From the looks of the stranger in front of her, they knew each other. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember who this person who said that he was Yi Zichen was. The name Yi Zichen is so familiar, but why can't I remember? No, I definitely know him. I definitely heard the name Yi Zichen before, but why? Why can't I remember anything? Lu Jing knitted her eyebrows, while a hint of confusion appeared on her cold face. She really did feel like the name Yi Zichen was familiar, but she just couldn't remember. Lu Jing. Yi Zichen roared angrily once again. Lu Jing squinted her eyes and looked up. Yi Zichen, who is it? Brat, I'm going to kill you. At that moment, the young man that Yi Zichen had thrown out slashed towards Yi Zichen with a menacing expression. Just as the sword light was about to land on Yi Zichen's body, an illusory golden sword suddenly appeared and blocked the sword energy. Kid Yi, what are you doing? Did you know that you nearly died just now? Xianyuan Xiang's reprimand sounded out in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness. Only then did Yi Zichen, who was in a daze, return to his senses and notice the menacing young man. Xiangjie, it's all thanks to you. Yi Zichen smiled gratefully, then retracted his thoughts and looked towards Lu Jing. She had really forgotten. It wasn't an act. He had really forgotten. What's going on? Yi Zichen gradually calmed down and frowned as he looked at Lu Jing. Did he lose his memory? This wasn't an idle drama. Besides, everyone was an immortal now. They could be considered gods. How could they lose their memories? He licked his lips, then took a few steps forward after a moment of hesitation. Don't come over. Yi Zichen could tell that Lu Jing's emotions weren't very stable, so he quickly stopped and reached out his hand to comfort her. Lu Jing, calm down. Amnesia, right? I can accept that. But let me tell you, we really do know each other. If you don't believe me, you can go back and ask your brother 12. Chui 12. You can't forget this, right? You two should always be together. You know brother 12. That's for sure. We really know each other. Although I don't know why you lost your memory, I can assure you that we definitely know each other. To the right. Xianyuan Xiang's urgent shout suddenly rang out in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness. When he heard that, he turned around and saw that the youth hadn't changed his mind. He was actually attacking him again. Scram! He kicked the youth in the stomach. Yi Zichen was currently worrying about Lu Jing's amnesia, but this brat didn't have any sense at all. The youth fell to the ground once more, but Lu Jing's expression didn't change in the slightest. Lu Jing, no matter how much I say right now, it's useless. When you go back and ask Chui 12, everything will come to light. He knows a bit about what happened between the two of us. All right, I'll go back and ask brother 12, Lu Jing nodded. Then can we leave each other's contact information? That'll be more convenient. As soon as Yi Zichen took out his transmission jade slip, Lu Jing coldly refused. No need, I'll go back and ask brother 12. Perhaps we really do know each other. But even if we do know each other, there's naturally a reason why I don't remember you now. Since I didn't want to remember you back then, there's no need for me to get to know you again. No. How did things suddenly turn out like this? Were all women's thoughts so terrifying? Yi Zichen wanted to explain, but after a moment's thought, he decided against it. Lu Jing was clearly very resistant to him, and he didn't know why she'd lost her memories. If he continued to tangle with her, his current impression of her would only plummet. Then we'll meet again if fate wills it. It'd be best if we didn't, said Lu Jing. Yi Zichen's shoulders trembled inexplicably. He laughed bitterly, but he didn't dwell on it. He turned, shoved his hands into his pockets, and turned his back to Lu Jing. However, before he'd taken more than a few steps, he felt a cold glint behind him. Lu Jing's voice rang out. Zhao Xing! Go to hell. The youth, who'd been beaten up so many times, was still relentlessly charging forward. This sort of unyielding spirit was worth learning from. However, Yi Zichen's patience had long since worn thin. Yi Zichen bent his waist and dodged the youth's sword, then grabbed the youth's ankle and dragged him to the ground. His right foot stomped down on the youth's wrist. Yi Zichen grabbed the sword that had fallen from the youth's hand and pressed it against the youth's throat. The sharp edge of the sword pressed against the youth's throat. The blade had already pierced through his skin, and blood was already seeping out. Under Yi Zichen's gaze, the youth felt as if he'd fallen into an icy cavern. His entire body trembled involuntarily. If you want to die, just say so. I'll give you a quick death. There's no need for you to provoke me over and over again. How dare you? Who dares bully a student of Four Directions Academy? At the end of the street, a fierce shout suddenly rang out. Everyone looked towards the end of the street and saw a middle-aged man with a vigorous appearance. He was dressed in a green robe and was striding over with a majestic aura. When Yi Zichen saw this, he pulled his sword away from the youth's throat. The youth ran behind the middle-aged man. Your Highness, 17th Highness. The middle-aged man greeted Lu Jing, then glanced at the youth. The youth called out in an aggrieved tone. Second uncle. When he saw the youth's injuries, the middle-aged man narrowed his eyes. How dare you injure a student of Four Directions Academy? Next, the middle-aged man's gaze landed on Yi Zichen. He waved his arm, and a wave of energy surged towards Yi Zichen. Chapter 1291. Take an inch and take a mile. Don't be fooled by the middle-aged man's casual wave of energy. He was a peak diviner expert. Even a casual attack wasn't something a sky supreme like Yi Zichen could withstand. What's more, the enemy had launched a sudden attack, and Yi Zichen had only managed to defend himself in time. He retreated dozens of steps before the signs of his explosive retreat eased. He stabbed the sword in his hand hard into the ground. He infused the divine power in his body into the sword and used the sword as a support to prevent himself from falling to the ground. Wiping away the blood at the corner of his mouth, this middle-aged man could be said to be cunning and ruthless. It looked like the wave of energy slammed into Yi Zichen's chest, but it was actually aimed at his dantian. Yi Zichen fished out a pill from his spatial ring and began to sort out his chaotic divine power. Then, he looked at the middle-aged man calmly. Lu Jing, who seemed to have nothing to do with it, couldn't help but frown lightly, but she didn't say anything. "Second uncle, you're finally here." With someone backing him up, the youth Yi Zichen had beaten up quite badly frowned. He gnashed his teeth and snorted angrily at Yi Zichen. This brat doesn't know what's going on. Not only did he speak frivolously to junior sister, he even dared to attack me. Shut up! The middle-aged man coldly glared at the young man and snorted, "Disgraceful thing, go to the side and wait." The middle-aged man's rebuke caused the young man's eyes to flash with anger, but he still cowered and retreated. 17th Prince, are you all right? The middle-aged man asked respectfully. I'm fine, Lu Jing said lightly. Zhao Yan said that the young man just now. I said I'm fine. Yes, as long as you're fine. Noticing the change in Lu Qing's expression, the middle-aged man hurriedly stopped asking. His attitude was so humble that the surrounding onlookers couldn't help but stare at him. Some of those with higher cultivation realms could already tell that this was a peerless expert who was at least a level 7 heaven realm expert. Although the young woman's cultivation base was not ordinary, there was still a certain gap between her and a high-level celestial being expert. To be able to make a high-level celestial being so fearful, and to even call her the 17th Highness. Which supreme being's descendant is this young lady? She's actually able to make even a heaven being so fearful. Didn't you hear that celestial being expert call her 17th Highness? They seem to be from the Four Corners Academy. The surrounding people whispered to each other. They couldn't help but be curious about Lu Qing's background. Just as the crowd was discussing spiritedly, the pupils of a rather old man shrank, and the hand holding the walking stick in his hand couldn't help but tremble. This young lady is the princess of the Four-Way Pavilion. As long as the name Four-Square Pavilion appeared, one could clearly hear the gasps of the surrounding people. The Bayan Emperor's reputation in the divine world was simply too high. He had survived 81 strikes of heavenly lightning to cross the divine world and obtained the Sword God's Godhead. He was also the only one whose true form was that of a demon, yet he occupied a mountain in the god race and called himself an emperor. Gradually, the onlookers began to look at Lu Qing with reverence in their eyes. Everyone knew that every prince in the Four Directions Pavilion was a treasure to Lao Ai, so it was no wonder that expert at the celestial being realm treated them like that. Looks like that young man isn't an ordinary person. Someone in the crowd sighed softly. Geniuses were always surrounded by geniuses, and the people around those with powerful backgrounds were also similar. If the disparity between the two parties was too great, then there would be no intersection at all. This was the eternal principle. You beat the young one, and here comes the old one. No matter where you go, it's always like this. By now, with the help of pills, Yi Zichen's injuries were mostly healed. He smiled calmly at the middle-aged man, then shook his head. You've already beaten him up. You should be satisfied, right? Goodbye. Yi Zichen didn't want to get involved in too much trouble. He didn't want to make things difficult for Lu Qing. Furthermore, the man was from Four Directions Academy, while he was from Skyspan Academy. It wouldn't be good for the two academies to fight in private. Furthermore, the battle of geniuses involved both Yao and demons. In the grand scheme of things, the students of the God race were all allies. Yi Zichen didn't particularly like this sort of internal strife. "Did I say you could leave?" To his surprise, just as Yi Zichen didn't want to cause trouble, the middle-aged man suddenly spoke up. Yi Zichen had only taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped. The instant he turned around, his pitch-black eyes flashed with an icy coldness. "What do you want?" When he saw Yi Zichen's attitude, the diviner frowned and swung his palm at him from afar. Yi Zichen was already on guard. He released his divine power, but he didn't try to block it. Instead, he channeled it into his legs to increase his speed and dodge the attack. After his first attack failed, the diviner seemed somewhat angry. He attacked Yi Zichen again and again. "Don't go too far." Yi Zichen did his best to dodge. He didn't want to intensify the conflict. Back when the youth attacked him, he'd already let him off several times. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and attacked, but he didn't kill him. This diviner's appearance was no different. Yi Zichen took one of his attacks head-on. Yi Zichen originally wanted to say goodbye, but the diviner was relentless. This was just like the old saying, if you backed down in the eyes of others, you were always weak and easy to bully. You've gone too far. You've so brazenly injured a student of Four Directions Academy and even insulted our 17th Highness. Do you think you can just leave like that? Snorted the middle-aged man. What a joke, asked Lu Jing. Did I ever say anything frivolous to her? Also, can you stop spouting such pompous bullshit? There are so many people watching. Was I the one who injured you, or was it one of your people who provoked me? I gave him so many chances, but he only went from bad to worse? Yi Zichen's expression was icy. Bullshit? Is that how you should talk to your seniors? With a rumble, the middle-aged man's aura spread outward. Yi Zichen, who was enveloped by this divine pressure, felt as if he were looking at a ferocious beast with its gaping maw. The beast's green eyes stared fixedly at him. Under this pressure, his body gradually stiffened. You're already a Sky Supreme, yet you don't know any manners. I really don't know which family's young master you're from. But that's fine. Today, I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of your useless seniors. I'll teach you how to behave in front of your seniors. As soon as he spoke, Yi Zichen saw the vicious beast in front of him suddenly open its maw. Light yellow mucus dripped from its mouth, and a pair of furry hands slapped towards him. Just as Yi Zichen was about to lose his composure, the vicious beast enveloping his heart shattered. Immediately after, he felt a pair of warm hands on his shoulders. A low chant that was as leisurely as the wind also rippled through this street. Chapter 1292. Become my nephew's daughter-in-law. A spiritual attack. The instant the beast shattered, Yi Zichen realized that the middle-aged man had used a spiritual attack on him. The attack directly suppressed his sea of consciousness, creating illusions that would cause the victim's mind to collapse. The beast disappeared, but Yi Zichen was still panting heavily. He hadn't even noticed that in such a short time, his clothes were drenched in sweat. Are you all right? A gentle voice whispered into his ear. At the same time, Yi Zichen felt warm divine power pour into his body and soothe his mind. He glanced behind him, and when he saw that beautiful, slightly reproachful face, Lady Providence, Yi Zichen hurriedly bowed. The person before him was none other than Lady Providence, the head of the profound pavilion, Xian Ji. And she wasn't the only one there. The mustached man who'd escorted him here, the god of fire, and a few other peerless experts he'd never seen before. From the pressure they exerted on the surrounding space, Yi Zichen could tell they weren't ordinary people. All of them stood behind Xianji, not a hair out of place. Their appearance caused the air on the entire street to freeze. This This is Lady Providence? When the onlookers saw Xianji, they were so shocked they couldn't speak. It was hard to say who knelt first, but the others followed suit. Some knelt on both knees, others on one knee, and they placed their left hands on their chests. Greetings, Lady Providence. Both the middle-aged man and the youth beside him were dumbfounded. Xianji simply smiled calmly and ignored them. She reached out and tousled Yi Zichen's hair. You little brat, you're truly worrisome. Fortunately, you're fine. She let out a relieved sigh, then indicated for Yi Zichen to stand by her side. She raised her right hand and lifted the kneeling people to their feet, then narrowed her eyes at the middle-aged man who'd attacked Yi Zichen. You want to help me teach my nephew a lesson? I wouldn't dare. He's Lady Providence's nephew. How could I possibly have the right to teach him a lesson? Lady Providence, please be magnanimous and let me go. Only 2 people could cause such a commotion on the central divine mountain, God Emperor Zhou Wu and Xianji. The instant Xianji appeared, the diviner sensed something major had happened. Never in his wildest dreams would he have guessed that Yi Zichen was Xianji's nephew. Rumor had it that Xianji had no siblings. How had this nephew of hers appeared? But no matter what, he knew he'd bitten the wrong person this time. Even if he was backed by the Four-Way Academy, and the Four-Way Academy was backed by the Four-Way Pavilion, Bian Yi of Yi Zichen didn't know how he'd suddenly became Xian Providence. Yi Zichen had no idea how he'd inexplicably become her nephew. Yi Divine Emperor had said. He didn't I said. After all, Yi Zichen hated the fact that the old diviner ghost bullied the weak and pushed his luck. Lu said, Yian said, I said. Lady, she said. She said, I said. Chun said. Yang Lu, I said. Yang, Yi Lu Yi. For my junior apprentice sister's sake, don't you know each other? Just let us go this once. A trace of clear disgust flashed across Lu Jing's face. Xianji glanced at Yi Zichen, Lu Jing, and the youth with a half-smile. She clenched her fists, hidden in her sleeves. Before long, she couldn't help but smile. He shot a look at the mustached man beside him. The mustached man nodded and disappeared in a flash. Bang! Only then did the crowd see that the begging youth's legs were twisted at an irregular angle. He'd already passed out. The mustached man was still standing where he'd been. No one had seen who'd done this. However, as a late-stage diviner, the middle-aged man could sense that it was the mustached man. What's wrong with that youth? He must have said something that displeased the master of the laws, and now he's being punished by the heavens. Look at how pitiful he is. All right, since he's so pitiful, I'll stand up for my nephew and won't pursue this any further. Hurry up and take him back. Xianji's eyes brimmed with astonishment and pity. The mustached man put his hand to his nose, as if he'd lost face for the Lady Providence. He coughed lightly. However, Xianji only glanced at him for a moment before his expression returned to normal and he looked straight ahead. Hurry up and go. If we delay any longer, the child's legs might be crippled. Thank you for your magnanimity, Lady Providence. The middle-aged man suppressed his anger and put the youth on his shoulder. Before he'd taken more than a few steps, a crafty smile flashed through Xianji's eyes. Right, that girl beside you is Bai An's 17th Highness, right? Once you get back, tell Bai An that I've taken a fancy to her. I want her to be my nephew's wife. Instantly Yi Zichen, Lu Yi, and the old diviner were all dumbfounded. Lady Providence, Lu Qing doesn't want to. Lu Qing directly refused. Even though the one standing in front of her was Lady Providence, someone who could shake the entire central divine mountain with a single stomp of her foot, Lu Qing didn't show the slightest hint of fear. She simply expressed her unwillingness. Who cares? Snorted Xianji. When it comes to marriage, you have to listen to your parents. I can make the decision for my nephew. As for you, naturally, Bai An will. You'll have to ask His Majesty whether or not you want to marry my nephew. His Majesty won't agree, said Lu Qing confidently. Is that so? Then why don't you call His Majesty over and ask him? Laughed Xianji. All right. Lu Qing nodded. Lady Providence. Yi Zichen couldn't help but speak up. Things had progressed a little too quickly. How could she suddenly agree to a marriage, just like that? Besides, Yi Zichen didn't want anyone else interfering in matters of the heart. His love life was chaotic enough as it was. Why did the Lady Providence have to add to the mess? Be good, my dear nephew. I know you're shy, but it's fine. I'll agree to this marriage. I quite like this girl, so let's marry her. Be a good girl. She patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder, then sent several indecipherable seals into the sky. No one knew what they were for. They just stared blankly at the darkening sky. For a full hour, nothing out of the ordinary appeared in the pitch-black sky. Then, Xianji put her hands on her hip. Bayan, do you agree to say something or not? There was another brief moment of silence. Then, a piece of golden paper floated down from the sky. Words were written on it with a black brush. The words. Chapter 1293. Truth or falsehood, agreed. The Dragon Crown Prince is still so taciturn. Xianji looked at the words on the paper and sighed. Her brows arched in delight. Looking at the words on the paper, Xianji sighed softly. She raised her brows and smiled. She'd really done it. Great Emperor Bai and of the Eastern Divine Mountain had agreed to the marriage. Lady Xianji had really done it. Great Emperor Bai and of the Eastern Divine Mountain had actually agreed to the marriage. Although he hadn't come in person, the word agreed was enough. However, the words were a bit too neat. It was hard to imagine that the lofty Great Emperor Bai and could write something so beautiful. At the same time, Yi Zichen looked at Lu Jing, his gaze complicated. When the other party noticed his gaze, it was obvious that she was rejecting him. She didn't meet his gaze at all. Instead, she stared intently at the golden paper in her hand. Is there a need to hate me so much? If she were a stranger, Yi Zichen wouldn't have said anything. The main reason was that they'd been intimate in the past. Lu Jing's sudden amnesia had caused all of her memories of him to vanish. Furthermore, after losing her memories, Lu Jing was like a completely different person. If she'd once been as passionate as the blazing sun, she was now as cold as a frigid wind. Take a look for yourself, my good niece-in-law. She chuckled, then used her divine power to transfer the paper to Lu Jing. His Majesty has agreed to the marriage. Lu Jing furrowed her brows and accepted the paper. When she saw the word agreed, her frown deepened. Did Bayan have no choice but to accept because of Xianji's high position? As soon as this thought appeared in her mind, Lu Jing rejected it. She did indeed have a high position and authority, but in front of Bayan, her status was nothing. He didn't even care about the God Emperor, much less the head of the profound pavilion. There was no way Bayan would approve of the marriage out of respect for his position. Furthermore, as the 17th Highness, Bayan deeply loved her. Countless nobles wanted to propose marriage, but even the Crown Prince of the Northwest Divine Mountain's Great Void Palace and the head of the Great Void Palace had visited in person, Bayan had refused. From this, it was clear that Bayan disdained marriage. As a prince of the Four Directions Pavilion, and especially the most favored prince, Lu Jing naturally recognized Lao Ai's handwriting. Bayan's words were like dancing dragons and phoenixes. Just by looking at the words, one could tell that it had the intention of matching the heavens and was not bound by the heavens and earth. However, the calligraphy in front of her was too rigid and formal. Even though the golden paper belonged to the four pavilions and the imprint was indeed left behind by His Majesty, Lu Jing still didn't think that it was Lao Ai's writing. His Majesty has yet to make an appearance. Who knows if this is a fake? Lu Qing frowned. You suspect the sovereign of falsifying evidence. Young lady, you truly are courageous. Xianji looked at Lu Jing with a smile that was not a smile. But that's fine. Who told you to be so deeply loved by me? Furthermore, my nephew really does have feelings for you, Lady Providence. Yi Zichen said anxiously. Calm down. I'm here to propose a marriage for you. Why are you so meddlesome? Xianji's transmission exploded in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness. Her expression remained unchanged as she smiled at Lu Qing. I won't bicker with you over your impudence. As for whether it's real or not, you'll know once you go back and ask His Majesty. Of course. When I get back, I'll definitely ask His Majesty to verify whether it's real or not. At the same time, she bowed deeply to Xianji. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. In a few days, there'll be a battle of geniuses. I need to make some more preparations. Young lady, before you leave, shouldn't you give my nephew your contact details? Never mind whether it's real or not, even if it's fake, it won't affect you much. If it's real, I'd be defying His Majesty's will if I don't keep you. Off in the distance, Lu Jing bit her lip, her expression filled with hesitation. When Xianji saw this, she used her divine power to push Yi Zichen to her side. Lu Jing hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she gave him her contact details. That foolish brat. Why does he have to let me, his aunt, handle everything personally? As the head of the profound pavilion, I'm really too pitiful. Every day, I'm busy divining the future and divining the movements of Yao and demons. Now I have to personally handle the marriages of my juniors. As she watched Yi Zichen and Lu Jing exchange contact details, Xianji couldn't help but sigh softly. Her sigh contained a hint of satisfaction. I've found my best friend a good daughter-in-law. She should thank me properly, right? The only thing I'm not happy about is what's going to happen to my Lori. After giving Yi Zichen her contact details, Lu Jing and the others left. Although Yi Zichen said he shouldn't have interfered, his body was honest. After receiving Lu Jing's contact details, his face lit up with delight. What are you grinning like an idiot for? Xianji walked up behind Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen was still immersed in his happiness, so he hurriedly greeted her. Lady Providence, I've caused you trouble. Bang! She slapped Yi Zichen on the head. Xianji was speechless. So you know you've caused me trouble? I brought your horoscope to my door, so why didn't you go in? I thought something had happened to you, so I summoned all my god generals in the divine capital. In the face of Xianji's rebuke, Yi Zichen hung his head. He didn't know what to say. Xianji's expression softened. She squinted her eyes and smiled. You found her contact details? Yi Zichen nodded. That's good. You heard it too, right? This girl is going to participate in the battle of geniuses. Aren't you going to participate too? In the future, you'll see each other a lot. That's all I can help you with. As for the final outcome, that's up to you. She patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder earnestly. In truth, Xianji hadn't done this on a whim. Rather, she'd unintentionally divined their fates. Based on the chart, it seemed they'd have far too many entanglements in the future. She might as well add fuel to the fire. At the very least, she'd saved Yi Zichen and Lu Jing from a minor calamity. However, Yi Zichen heard the problem. She'd clearly mentioned the words, "What's the outcome?" Great Emperor Baiyan had agreed to the marriage. That meant his relationship with Lu Jing was already set in stone. But what's the outcome? Suddenly, Yi Zichen recalled the elegant calligraphy on the golden paper. He doubted the authenticity of the characters. Did you really forge the character Yun just now? Asked Yi Zichen in astonishment. Kid, what on earth are you thinking? I'm a mighty ruler, the head of the profound pavilion. Even among the 9 divine mountains, I have a lofty status. Why would I forge it? Then what about my reputation? Besides, you should have seen the golden paper and the brand yourself. If Baiyan hadn't done it, how could the brand have appeared? That said, Baiyan really wasn't the one who left those words. Xianji chuckled and looked up into the sky. Her eyes flashed with profound wisdom. Chapter 1294. Little fellow, you sure are wild. Eastern Divine Mountain, Square Pavilion. Your Majesty, I've delivered the words. In front of the waterfall, A stooped old man with a turtle shell on his head bowed respectfully. His head was facing a figure in a golden dragon robe, whose back was facing him. This person was only standing on the ground, but he seemed to be one with heaven and earth. No aura leaked out from his body. He was like a natural stone. Even the birds perched on his shoulders to rest. Very well. After a long while, the golden-robed man nodded. The moment his shoulders trembled, the birds flapped their wings and flew away in fright. At the same time, he turned around and gazed at the waterfall in the distance. Under his sharp face, there was some worry between his eyebrows. "Is this the right thing to do? Your Majesty, are you talking about the marriage with 17th Highness that Xianji mentioned?" asked the old turtle. "I've divined 17th's fate. She will marry in the future, but she will be the master of the North Myrtle Imperial Star. Back then, I didn't let 17th marry because, perhaps..." The golden-robed man hesitated, then sighed. "But 3 years ago, 17th's fate suddenly changed. After waiting for thousands of years, I had no choice but to admit that I am not the one chosen by heaven. 17th is my most beloved highness. I can't divine a tribulation for her. Xianji's calculations are flawless. In terms of divination, I cannot compare to her. Since she says so, then let's do it." "But why did you let me?" "Because I can't divine it." The golden-robed man sighed deeply. "If I can't divine it, I don't want to push karma. In a while, 17th will definitely ask. When that time comes, tell her I'm in seclusion. As for the meaning of the words, let them take their course." "I understand." The golden-robed man's eyes were filled with melancholy as he gazed at the waterfall. "North Myrtle Imperial Star, I have waited for you for tens of thousands of years. In terms of merit, I have suppressed the 6 mountains and flattened the 8 wastelands. In terms of the heavenly Tao, my supreme Tao is the closest to the Imperial Star's Tao. But you didn't choose me." Back then, Zhou Wu was fortunate enough to go to the space-time corridor and seize the fate of Planet 5 Elements to become his sovereign body. I also went to the corridor, but it was empty. Could it be that I really don't have a heavenly fate? In that case, why did you give me the godhead of that year's God Emperor? Why did you give me so many fantasies? Lady Xianji's sigh reached Yi Zichen's ears. Her sigh was filled with boundless meaning. As long as one was a cultivator, they would most likely come into contact with this sort of divination. Yi Zichen naturally knew how to do it as well. However, his cultivation was low and his cultivation was shallow. He didn't have the time or energy to immerse himself in it, so he wasn't particularly proficient in divination. Xianji created the profound pavilion and could be said to be the #1 diviner in all of history. It was rumored that even god emperors sought him out to perform divination. It could be seen that his divination skills were superb. However, she actually said that she couldn't see through it. Yi Zichen was confused. "Is there anything in this world that she can't see through?" "Your ladyship, what do you mean you can't see through?" When she heard Yi Zichen's question, her lips curved into a smile. She reached out and patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder. "You don't have to worry about that. The more you know, the more karma you'll be tainted by. All you need to do is trick that girl, Lu Qing, into falling for me as soon as possible. After that, you can trick the others, such as Zhuo Mo, Shui Yang's daughter, Shui Honghong, the 2 treasures of the 9-tailed fox clan, and Long." Xianji suddenly shut up. In truth, Yi Zichen was dumbfounded as well. It seemed she was telling him to pick up girls? She even used the word trick. Also, what the hell were those 2 treasures of the 9-tailed fox clan? Su Yan was one of them. Yi Zichen was well aware of this. Then who was the other one? The only foxes he knew were the 3 Su sisters. Su Zhu was from Yinshang then. Big sister Lu'er? "Your ladyship, are you referring to Su Lu'er and Su Yan?" asked Yi Zichen tentatively. "Su Lu'er." Xianji was taken aback. "Kid, you sure are wild. You even want beautiful sisters? Then what about the 2 treasures of the Fox clan?" I said Su Lu. Xian Ji glared at him. It seems you have ulterior motives for that girl as well. Yi Zichen lowered his head. He didn't want to explain, there was no point. However, he was sure she wasn't talking about Su Yan and Su Lu. Su Yan was naturally one of them. So who was the one from the Fox clan? Little did he know, deep within the Fox clan's mountains, a young woman suddenly sneezed. Why did I sneeze? Could it be that Sweetie misses me? It seems I'll have to visit Sweetie when I have time. It's been so long since I've seen him. I'm starting to miss him. I'm his fated star. How can I not stay by his side? As the crowd respectfully sent them off, Xian Ji led Yi Zichen and her divine generals away. On the way, Xian Ji lectured Yi Zichen repeatedly. Yi Zichen listened until his ears grew calluses, but he couldn't retort. If he dared, she'd smack him on the head. If you'd pushed open the door earlier, would all this have happened? When they returned to Xian Ji's residence, Xian Ji glared at Yi Zichen. Hurry up and go in. There's someone waiting for you inside. Waiting for me? Yi Zichen blinked in confusion. On his way here, he'd been curious. Since Xian Ji was looking for him, and they'd met, she could have just said what she wanted. Why did she have to return to her residence? Now she said someone was waiting for him? It seemed the person who wanted to see him wasn't Xian Ji? Don't look at me. Go in and see for yourself. Just don't cry. As soon as Xian Ji said that, Yi Zichen pushed open the door, his expression indescribable. What on earth is going on? Lu Rong stood in the courtyard, her hands clasped together as she paced back and forth. Several times she wanted to leave, but when she recalled what Xian Ji had told her before she left, she could only suppress her urges. Her emotions were complicated. It wasn't Xian Ji's fault. Back when she'd just become the Lord of 7 Stars, even when Yi Zichen underwent his divine tribulation, she was as calm as a cucumber. Back then, she had no way of seeing Yi Zichen. Even if she was anxious, there was nothing she could do. But now that mother and son were about to reunite, she couldn't calm herself down. Why isn't he back yet? Yi Rong stared at the jade slip in her hand. She'd lost track of how many messages she'd sent Xian Ji, but she hadn't received a single reply. This won't do. I have to go out and take a look. Who cared about the capital of the Divine Mountains? Who cared about God Emperor Zhou Wu? Nothing in the world was more important than her son. Recently, the relationship between the upper 3 realms had been tense. Because of the Battle of Geniuses, the capital was bustling with Yao and demons. If anything happened to Yi Zichen, she'd blame herself for the rest of her life. Yi Rong steeled her resolve. Without any further hesitation, she headed for the door. Just as she was about to push it open, the door to her residence. Chapter 1295. Mother and son meet. Who exactly wants to see me? As he pushed open the door, Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter to himself. It seemed he didn't have anyone on Xian Ji's level in his social circle. Zhao Qianhe? It shouldn't be her. Never mind the fact that she didn't have a particularly good impression of Yi Zichen. If she really wanted to see him, there was no need for her to avoid them. Yi Zichen's heart filled with doubt as he pushed open the door. Zichen. The instant he pushed open the door, he heard a trembling voice call out to him. Yi Zichen instantly froze. His eyes trembled uncontrollably as he looked at the woman in plain clothes. Her eyes were filled with tenderness and love. Mom! Yi Zichen stared at her in a daze. His voice trembled as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Caught off guard, the woman's eyes welled up with tears. She hugged Yi Zichen. In terms of height, Yi Zichen had long since surpassed Yi Zichen. Although she'd wanted to hold her son, in the end, she'd only held him in her arms. Yi Zichen's lips quivered as he slowly reached out and hugged her. You're all right. That's wonderful. Even Xian Ji and the divine generals by her side couldn't help but feel their hearts ache at the sight of this mother and son meeting. They'd lived for far too long. Even cultivators didn't have immortal lifespans. Cultivation only determined lifespan. One day, when one's lifespan came to an end and he couldn't break through, his life would come to an end. When they saw this, they couldn't help but think of their loved ones. Unfortunately, they'd long since passed away. Furthermore, the mustached man couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Fortunately, he hadn't done anything to Yizichin. After all, this was the Lord of 7 Stars' son. Although I don't particularly want to interrupt this heartwarming scene, I still have to say, shouldn't we enter the courtyard and close the door? As soon as we open it, your aura will seep out. If Zhou Wu comes, I'm under his jurisdiction. It'll be difficult. Xian Ji sighed helplessly. Yi Rong, who'd been lying in Yizichin's arms, got up and used her divine power to evaporate her tears. She steadied herself, nodded, and took Yizichin's hand. Let's enter the courtyard. After the two of them entered the courtyard, the divine generals did not follow them into the courtyard. The door to the courtyard was tightly shut once more. Before it closed, Xian Ji left behind a few restrictions. Only then did she follow him into the courtyard, feeling at ease. It's been hard on you all these years. Look at you, you've lost weight. Yi Rong held Yizichin's hand gently, her eyes filled with a mother's deep love for her son. After entering the courtyard, Xian Ji tactfully did not join in. She knew that now that mother and son had reunited, they would have many things to say. She walked alone to the pavilion to the side and sat down. She looked indifferently at the warm words in the distance. Actually, Yizichin had a lot of things he wanted to say to Yi Rong, but when he saw that Yi Rong was fine, it was as if none of his words were important anymore. He simply sat quietly by Yi Rong's side and chuckled. After a full 6 hours, the conversation between the mother and son finally came to an end. During this time, Yizichin told Yi Rong about his experiences. Of course, he intentionally left out some of the more dangerous parts, but as the Lord of 7 Stars, she knew everything. Her gaze was still as affectionate as ever, and she gently rubbed Yizichin's head. Our Zichin has truly grown up. Yizichin could sense the gratification in Yi Rong's voice. She looked at him lovingly, as if she couldn't get enough of him. Yizichin smiled back. Xian Ji, who had yet to disturb them, walked over. You should be done here, right? Lady Providence. Yizichin nodded at her. You're still calling me Lady Providence? Didn't your mother just tell you about our relationship? You should be calling me Auntie now, understand? Xian Ji laughed. As a junior, it wasn't appropriate for Yizichin to ask about the relationship between elders. Although he was astonished that his mother was with the head of the profound pavilion, and that they were so close, he didn't ask. Since his mother hadn't explained, he didn't press the issue. In response, Yizichin glanced at Yi Rong. When he saw her nod at him, he respectfully greeted Xian Ji. Auntie. Hey, good boy, nephew. Xian Ji giggled and patted Yizichin on the shoulder. Taking in the Star Emperor as a nephew all of a sudden feels pretty good. When she saw this, Yi Rong could only shake her head helplessly. She said nothing. The Star Emperor. It seemed Xian Ji already knew about Yizichin's Emperor Star's appearance. However, given her abilities at divination, it wasn't surprising that she knew. Besides, she was close to Yi Rong, so she most likely wouldn't leak this information. Yizichin was in an exceptionally good mood this time around. Not only had he met his mother, but he'd also found Xian Ji and accepted her as his auntie. This was a powerful backer. In the future, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted in the God realm? What kind of status did Xian Ji have? She was second only to the God Emperor, Zhou Wu. Although the other 8 holy lands of the Divine Mountains weren't under the God Emperor's control, they were still his subjects on the surface. Even those emperors had to give her some face when they saw her. With a backer like her, Yizichin couldn't help but feel more confident. However, he still didn't know Yi Rong's identity. If he knew she was the Lord of 7 Stars, someone who stood above all others in the Saint Palace, someone who was in charge of countless galaxies, wouldn't he have to go to the heavens? Kid, you called me Auntie, so I won't let you call me that for nothing, said Xian Ji calmly. Yi Zichen was stunned. Could it be that she'd get something out of this? Given her status and position, a gift from her had to be a divine artifact on the leaderboards, right? Just as he was filled with anticipation, he saw Xian-Ji curl her finger at his forehead. Instantly, he felt as if something had been stripped from his sea of consciousness. When he came back to his senses, he saw that the 10 pieces of soul pearly yuan, which had been protecting his soul and sea of consciousness, had been stripped away from his sea of consciousness. After leaving his sea of consciousness, the 10 pieces of soul pearly yuan were also looking around in confusion. Yi Zichen arched his brows. Chapter 1296. Soul pearly yuan was reforged. Reforged the treasure. In truth, Xian-Ji had already planned this out. Of course, if Yi Zichen weren't related to Yi Rong, she wouldn't have bothered. But since he was her best friend's precious son and he'd called her aunt, as his aunt, she naturally had to do something. Reforge the soul pearly yuan? Yi Zichen couldn't help but knit his brows. After inheriting the memories of Yellow Emperor Xianyuan's previous life, he was deeply attached to the pearl. Although soul pearly yuan didn't communicate with him as much as Xianyuan Xiang did, he knew that this soul pearl had always been protecting his soul and sea of consciousness. Retempering a magic treasure meant that the entire magic treasure had to be reforged. Naturally, the treasure's artifact spirit would be reforged as well. You don't want to? Xian-Ji clutched the pearl and laughed. Didn't you notice that your spiritual sea was breached just now? Yi Zichen was naturally aware of this. The middle-aged man's soul attack had worked precisely because it had breached soul pearly yuan's defenses. That was why his spiritual attack was so powerful. My spiritual sea was breached? Yi Rong was shocked. A cultivator's spiritual sea was the most important thing. If that line of defense was breached, it would be even more dangerous than being captured by an enemy. Through one's spiritual sea, one could even control a person's will and become their enemy's puppet. Damage to one's spiritual sea would directly affect one's understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth, making it impossible to take even half a step forward. When she heard that Yi Zichen's spiritual sea had been breached, Yi Rong's expression changed despite herself. Don't worry, I'm here. What could possibly happen to him? When she saw Yi Rong's expression, Xian-Ji knew what she was about to say, so she hurriedly sealed off her escape route. Your treasure was forged during the Yellow Emperor's reign. Back then, he hadn't even become a supreme. A divine artifact protecting one's soul is naturally invincible at his level, but you have to think this through. You're no longer the Yellow Emperor. You're a Sky Supreme now, and your opponents are Sky Supremes and Diviners. Soul Pearly Yuan's soul defense isn't very useful at this level. Yi Zichen was keenly aware that she was telling the truth. In truth, he'd already sensed that Soul Pearly Yuan's protection of his spiritual sea had weakened. However, although it was weak at that time, it did not allow the other party to successfully attack the interior of his knowledge sea. This time, the middle-aged man's mental attack had completely broken through Yi Yuan's defensive barrier, causing this matter to be magnified infinitely. I'm already trying my best, $10 said pitifully. Of course I know you're working hard. Yi Zichen smiled at him. Xian-Ji spoke up as well. This is the best time to refine Soul Pearly Yuan again. If you don't refine it, then you might as well not use a soul defense divine artifact. Because his defense is no different from you not wearing a defensive divine artifact. Listen to your auntie Xian-Ji. The defense of the spiritual sea is no small matter. Only through retempering can the Dharma treasure level up and ensure the safety of your spiritual sea, Yi Rong added. In her eyes, nothing was more important than Yi Zichen's safety. Yi Zichen didn't make a decision right away. Instead, he looked at $10, who was still floating in the air. His opponent was looking back at him. From his young face and pitch-black eyes, Yi Zichen could see his indescribable grievance, as well as his slight internal struggle. From the moment he was born, He knew that his mission was to ensure the safety of his master's knowledge sea. He'd followed his master for 9 lifetimes, and he'd never made a single mistake. Only in this life, as Yi Zichen's cultivation continued to rise, did he realize that he was powerless? Yi Zichen's opponents grew stronger and stronger, and their attacks on his knowledge sea grew fiercer and fiercer. But he was still his old self. He couldn't hold on any longer. Right now, he wasn't a qualified guardian. He wasn't strong enough to ensure the safety of his master's knowledge sea. But even though he'd tried his best, the results were still barely satisfactory. He felt wronged, but he blamed himself for it. The moment Xianji suggested retempering his knowledge sea, he was actually 80% willing to agree. As a protective divine artifact, he had to ensure his master's absolute safety. Right now, he couldn't guarantee his master's safety. Retempering his knowledge sea was his only option. However, retempering his knowledge sea meant that he'd disappear, and that he'd have to retemper all of his memories. He didn't want to forget all the ups and downs he'd experienced with his master, nor did he want to forget the little girl in the room, following him around with the blocks. Back then, they'd hooked their fingers and said they'd be good friends for the rest of their lives. He'd solemnly promised for the rest of his life. But now it seemed he might have to go back on his word. After staring at each other for a long time, Yi Zichen decided not to retemper Soul Pearly Yuan. Although a soul-protecting divine artifact was precious, so long as he was alive, he'd eventually find a high-grade one. But retempering Soul Pearly Yuan wasn't Soul Pearly Yuan anymore. I agree. However, before Yi Zichen could say anything, Soul Pearly Yuan appeared right in front of him. He pressed his lips into a smile, then floated to Xianji's side. As a protective divine artifact, Master's safety is always our #1 priority. Right now, I can't guarantee the safety of Master's knowledge sea. I've put Master in danger time and time again. This is my dereliction of duty. I'm willing to accept retempering and use my new self to protect Master's knowledge sea once more. The artifact spirit of Soul Pearly Yuan was only a teenager, but the words he said, as well as the resolute expression on his face, were not words that a 10-year-old teenager could say or act like. Yi Zichen, who was about to give up, couldn't help but knit his brows. He repeatedly tried to communicate with Soul Pearly Yuan through his knowledge sea. I've already decided. Soul Pearly Yuan's face was wreathed in a radiant smile. When he saw Yi Zichen's impatience, he couldn't help but purse his lips. I'm very grateful for your trust in me all these years, and for your tolerance of me. You were the one who decided on my existence, and I've always worked hard to prove that your decision was correct. Refining a magical artifact is an unavoidable turning point in my life. I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly. I'm the protective divine artifact of your knowledge sea. Ensuring its safety is my #1 priority. Please respect my decision and let me reforge it. What a good child, Xianji couldn't help but sigh. Xianji couldn't help but sigh. When I reforge it, I'll do my best to preserve your memories, but I can't guarantee that they'll stay. There's no need. Just do your best to raise my level. Memories are made up for with experience. After being reforged and reborn, I'll still have new memories. Spirit Lord Yuan forced a smile onto his face, but there was a flash of disappointment in his eyes. Chapter 1297. Body Search, and Xianji, I'll leave Yuan to you. Yi Zichen stood in front of the courtyard with a heavy heart. Soul Pearly Yuan's words, in particular, made him feel even more bitter. Xianji nodded slightly and glanced at the spirit of Soul Pearly Yuan floating in the courtyard. I know. During this period of time, there aren't any soul-protecting artifacts protecting the sea of consciousness. In the upcoming battle of geniuses, try your best to prevent your opponent's spiritual attacks from entering your sea of consciousness. Your nephew understands, Yi Zichen nodded. I'll let Ba Zi send you back to Divine Martial Academy. You don't have to say goodbye to your mother. She's definitely holding back her reluctance to let you leave. If you do, I'm afraid she'll hug you and not let you go." Xianji pursed her lips into a smile and shot him a look. "Don't forget to quickly deceive that little girl, Lu Qing. That's your main task." Soul Pearl Yuan's reforging wasn't something that could be completed in a short period of time. Yi Zichen left Soul Pearl Yuan behind, then, considering that he still had to face the upcoming battle of the three realms of geniuses, he had 8 characters send it back to the Divine Martial Academy to prepare. Yi Rong's eyes were filled with reluctance. As Yi Zichen left, she struggled to speak, but in the end, she could only stand in the middle of the courtyard and silently watch him leave. "They're all gone. Stop looking." Xianji called Yuan to her side and smiled lightly at Yi Rong. "The Lu Qing you mentioned just now, is she Bai An's 17th prince?" After Yi Zichen left, Yi Rong gradually returned to her usual demeanor as the Lord of 7 Stars. She sat down on a stone chair and looked coolly at Xianji. "Yes, it's her. Shouldn't you thank me? I made her your daughter-in-law." "Xianji, why must you do this?" Yi Rong looked at Xianji with some pity in her eyes. She couldn't help but sigh and shake her head. "You clearly know that there are some karma you cannot touch. You clearly could have stayed out of it. Why did you interfere? Don't feel sorry for me. You looked like you wanted to say something just now. What are you trying to do?" "I want to take Zichen back to the Gu family." "Then why did you do it?" When Xianji asked the same question, Yi Rong stared blankly for a long moment, but said nothing. At their level and status, they were well aware of what their actions represented. Sometimes, when one was tainted by too much karma, even hegemons would find it difficult to bear the consequences of their actions. However, they still made such a choice because they knew that there were some things that they had to do. Smiling lightly, Xianji patted her best friend's shoulder, stretched lazily, and walked to the door of the room. "I have to reforge this magic treasure for your precious son. For the time being, you stay here and protect me. Once I'm done with the tempering, you should hurry back to your sage palace. Although Zhou Wu doesn't come here often, I can't be sure that he won't come here forever." Ji Qi Yen Qi. Qi. After Yen Ji said. Yi Ji, although 8 characters was a ruler, he was different from the other rulers. He didn't have an overly domineering desire for supremacy. He was able to become Xianji's most favored divine general, even though he wasn't the strongest. He relied on his smooth communication skills and ability to seize every opportunity. Even though he was a ruler, he was a top-tier ruler. There was nothing he couldn't do. Flatter, 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 and sail with the wind. Yi Zichen escorted Yi Zichen to the Divine Martial Academy. As soon as he arrived, several guards walked up to him. Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh when he saw the guards. The imperial capital lived up to its reputation. The Academy's guards were all diviners, far more powerful than Skyspan Academy's guards. "Who are you? Report your identity." Just as Yi Zichen was about to speak, the mustached man puffed out his chest and walked up. "This young master is young Master Yi from Skyspan Academy. As for who I am, do I really need to introduce myself?" "8th Master Hu." It could be seen that the mustache man was doing quite well in the imperial capital. These guards immediately recognized him when they saw him and addressed him as Lord Ba, giving him enough face. However, before he could finish his sentence, the guard captain standing at the very front withdrew his smile. Yi Zichen's expression was resolute and serious. The guards behind him still raised their weapons and blocked Yi Zichen's path into the academy. "Even if you're 8th Master Hu's escort, we can't break the rules. All geniuses participating in the Battle of Geniuses need to verify their identity. I'd like to ask this student of Skyspan Academy to cooperate." As he spoke, the guard surrounded Yi Zichen as if to search him. Since the demons and Yao were participating as well, the relationship between the 3 sides was rather ambiguous. Yi Zichen could understand why the Divine Martial Academy needed to verify their identities. However, Yi Zichen couldn't accept a body search at all. He had far too many secrets on him that he couldn't let others see. Furthermore, there were many ways to prove his identity. A body search. That sort of method was completely unnecessary. The instant the guards stepped forward, Yi Zichen summoned a divine power astral wall. The wall surged with power and pushed the diviner guards away. Yi Zichen stared at them vigilantly. The mustache man was so slippery. At first, he didn't stop them. That was out of respect for the Divine Martial Academy, and he didn't know if Yi Zichen was willing to cooperate. Now that Yi Zichen had made it clear he didn't want to cooperate, it was time for him to act. Impudent. A ruler was called a ruler because his cultivation and comprehension of heaven and earth had already reached a level where he could rule over all of heaven and earth. Hubatzi's roar was laced with the power of heaven and earth. The guards' hearts trembled, and they took several steps back. "Young Master Yi, are you all right?" He flashed to Yi Zichen's side. When he saw Yi Zichen shake his head to indicate that he was fine, he snorted coldly at the guards. "What are you doing?" "I, Hubatzi, sent young Master Yi here." "You suspect his identity, but are you also suspecting me?" With a rumble, a ruler's aura surged forth. Boundless divine power pressed down on the guards, making it hard for them to breathe. They struggled to resist the pressure, gnashed their teeth, and shouted, "Master Ba, please calm down. Please calm down, Lord Ba. We are not doubting Lord Ba, but the higher-ups have ordered us to do this. We have to verify his identity before we let him into the academy. I personally sent young Master Yi here. Isn't that enough proof of his identity?" Hubatzi looked coldly at the diviners. Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He never would have guessed that this slick-looking middle-aged man was actually so strong. Although Yi Zichen knew that this was partly because of Xianji, it didn't change the fact that Yi Zichen's impression of him had improved in the slightest. If the mustache man knew about this, he'd definitely shout in his heart that it was worth it. Chapter 1298. Chapter 1298. Protection. No matter how the guards tried to argue, Hubatzi's aura didn't falter in the slightest. But then he realized that these guards were just putting their lives on the line, so he didn't try to pressure them too much. He retracted his aura, pointed at the guard captain, and said, "I won't pressure you. I won't use my power to pressure you. Go and find the person in charge of your academy. I want to see, with me here, who dares to touch young Master Yi." When they saw Hubatzi's unyielding attitude, the guards couldn't do anything. This wasn't a situation they could control, so the guard captain could only nod and hurry to the academy's board of directors. A moment later, a scholarly man walked out of the Divine Martial Academy, standing beside the captain of the guards. "Lord Ba, I heard someone from our academy angered you." The scholarly man walked over with a smile, half bent at the waist, and took Hubatzi's hand. "Not really," snorted Hubatzi. "What's going on? Don't you recognize me? How dare you provoke me? What's going on?" Under the scholarly man's scolding, the guard captains explained the situation. The scholarly man reprimanded them for a while before he said with a smile on his face, "Please calm down, Lord Ba. This isn't their fault. You know that clansmen from the three realms have come to the Battle of Geniuses this time, and the relationship between those two realms and our God realm. I don't need to explain further, do I? We're only being vigilant for the sake of the bigger picture." Unbeknownst to Hubatzi, the scholarly man's actions were laughable. He recognized the scholarly man in front of him, Dai Qingren. 30 years ago, he'd reached the threshold of the half-step ruler realm. Although he was only a half-step ruler, his comprehension of the Tao of life and death was rather special. As a result, he'd leapt to become one of the 3 vice-deans of the Divine Martial Academy. Hubatzi's commotion outside just now wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. At the very least, Dai Qingren and the other vice-deans had been able to sense it. However, they hadn't immediately appeared to take care of the problem. Instead, they'd asked the guard captains to look for him, and they'd even put on an act of ignorance. Ha! Hubatsi snorted with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. They were all working for the God Emperor's estate, so he had to give them some face. He couldn't be bothered to argue with Dai Qingren, so he said directly, "I've heard all of this from your people. I'm asking now, can young Master Yi go in or not?" "Of course, we can trust Lord Ba. The people you sent over are naturally exempt from these checks." Dai Qingren smiled elegantly and frowned at those guards. "You still don't dare to enter? Step aside and let this young master enter." The guards didn't dare tarry and made way for him. Hubatsi raised his eyebrows. "I want to personally send young Master Yi to his academy's residence. Is that all right?" "Of course, no problem. But you probably don't know the way, so let me take you there." "Lead the way." Dai Qingren smiled, nodded, and led the way. Hubatsi and Yi Zichen followed him into the academy. Perhaps they really were wary of the realm of monsters and demons. Within a 10-kilometer radius, there would be at least 10 teams of celestial beings and 5 teams of sky supreme beings patrolling in the air and on the ground. "Lord Ba, you've seen it for yourself. We really weren't trying to make things difficult for you." Dai Qingren couldn't help but smile bitterly. Hubatsi nodded calmly, his gaze grave. No wonder the divine underworld had summoned most of their diviners a few days ago. So they'd all been sent to the Divine Martial Academy. It seemed that the demons and Yao's visit posed a far greater threat to the divine capital than he'd imagined. After walking for a full hour, Dai Qingren, who was leading the way, finally stopped. "This is Skyspan Academy's assigned residence." A 9-story building appeared before them. On the 6th floor hung a signboard with the words Skyspan engraved on it. Yi Zichen and Hubatsi glanced at each other. "I'm going in. Young Master Yi, take care. Here's my contact information. If you run into any problems, feel free to contact me. I'll be there as soon as I can." "All right." After exchanging contact information, Yi Zichen walked straight into the building. At this moment, Dai Qingren smiled elegantly and asked in a seemingly casual manner, "This young master looks a bit unfamiliar. Which family's young master is he from? Why did Lord Ba have to personally?" "Don't ask questions you shouldn't ask." Hubatsi coldly cut him off, put away the jade slip, and flew away from the front of the building without so much as a backward glance. Dai Qingren also shook his head with an embarrassed smile. Not long after he flew out, 2 men appeared beside him. One of them looked relatively young, while the other's hair was already graying. "Lil Dai, how was it?" asked the older man. "I didn't get anything out of him." Hubatsi was nervous about that youth. I tried to ask about his identity, but Hubatsi stopped me. However, Hubatsi kept calling him Young Master Yi. For him to call him Young Master means that his background isn't ordinary. "He's most likely related to Xianji," said Dai Qingren. "Which child participating in the Battle of Geniuses has an ordinary background? What we care about is whether or not he really has the Xianyuan sword and Yao Sealing Pagoda." The younger man frowned. "There's no way to know. The guards at the entrance wanted to search him, but Hubatsi stopped them," said Dai Qingren. "That Hubatsi?" The younger man's eyes clouded over. "Forget it. Since that's the result, there's no need to force it." The elder sighed. "Now that he's entered the sky-piercing pagoda, and I've heard that he's close with the young ladies of the Sea of Innocence, it'll be even more difficult for us to probe him. As for whether or not he really has the Xianyuan sword and Yao Sealing Pagoda, we'll have to wait and see. Besides, we're not really trying to steal those 2 divine artifacts. We just want to be sure and assign people to protect them. For now, we need to keep an eye on the Yaoan demons. As for the Yao Sealing Pagoda and Xianyuan sword, I'm more worried about them." It was obvious that this elder had the highest status among the 3 of them. After he spoke, Dai Qingren and the younger man nodded slightly. Then, the old man spoke again. Perhaps they also know that the two divine artifacts are in that youth's hands. Since we can't be sure, we might as well pretend that he has them. We have to ensure his safety. We absolutely cannot let those two divine artifacts fall into the hands of the Yaoan demons. Understood. Chapter 1299. The Hidden Dangers of the Battle of Geniuses. The 9th floor of the building. The first and second floors were for leisure, for entertaining guests, and for dining. The 3rd to 5th floors were for bedrooms and secluded cultivation. They were for students participating in the Battle of Geniuses. The 6th floor and above were for training, as well as for post-match meetings and post-match reviews. When Yi Zichen entered the building, Shui Mo and the others were sitting on chairs in the main hall, chatting. However, only Anti-Upheaval's members were present. The other student societies weren't here. As for the accompanying teachers and Qiu and Huai, they weren't there either. "Brother Yi, you're back." As soon as he entered, Li Hu and the others greeted him. Shui Mo walked up to him as well. "I'm back." Yi Zichen nodded, then sat down on a leather sofa across from Li Hu and the others. He picked up the teapot, poured himself a cup of fragrant tea, and took a sip. "It's already so late, yet you're still up? What are you doing here? What do you think?" Shui Mo rolled her eyes in exasperation. "We were waiting for you, of course. There were so many of us, but you let that senior take you away. I don't know how you're doing, so we could only wait for you to come back." "I'm so tired," snorted Shui Bebe lazily like a little kitten. "What's there to worry about? Hubatsi took me away, and the dean agreed. What else could he possibly do to me?" Yi Zichen chuckled and shook his head. Shui Mo arched her brows. "Hubatsi? Isn't he one of Lady Providence's divine generals? If that's the case, then the people who came to pick us up are from the Profound Pavilion, not the God Emperor's estate. Why are they looking for you?" As the second daughter of the Sea of Innocence, Shui Mo didn't know all of the major powers and experts of the other divine mountains, but she'd heard about them from time to time. When Hubatsi was mentioned, Shui Mo knew he was from the Profound Pavilion. The Profound Pavilion was in charge of justice and divination. It was hard for Shui Mo not to be surprised that they'd come looking for Yi Zichen. In response, Yi Zichen merely smiled and said nothing. When she saw his expression, Shui Mo knew he didn't want to say anything. She wasn't the type to get to the bottom of things. Yi Zichen didn't want to say anything, so she didn't pursue the matter. Shui Bebe, on the other hand, wrinkled her nose. Acting mysterious. Yi Zichen merely chuckled in response. Shui Mo frowned at Shui Bebe, put her hand on her head, and shook her head. "I almost forgot. We're here to tell you that the lot drawing ceremony will be held tomorrow." "So fast?" Yi Zichen couldn't help but knit his brows. Have the other divine mountains all arrived? The Demon Clan and the Devil Clan had also come? The lot drawing ceremony will be held tomorrow? They're all here. Skyspan Academy is probably the last to arrive, said Shui Mo with a nod. Then why don't I sense any Yao or demons at all? Asked Yi Zichen. This time, Luozi pursed his lips into a smile and said, Actually, we had the same doubts in the beginning, but not long ago, we asked the people from the Divine Martial Academy, and they said that the Yaoan demons don't stay with us. The Academy has a separate area for them, and I heard that they've even set up restrictions around the area so we can't sense their auras. No wonder. Yi Zichen couldn't help but nod. Just now, when he'd entered the Academy, he hadn't sensed any Yao or demons' auras, so he'd assumed they hadn't arrived yet. Now it seemed that the people in the imperial capital had made them stay in other places for the convenience of management, and then set up the restriction. They could say that it was to protect the clansmen of the Demon Clan and the Demon Clan, but in fact it was to monitor their movements through the restriction. Yi Zichen hadn't expected the Yao and Demon realms to agree. That's not all. The battle between the Yao and Demon realms will directly remove all restrictions on the Yao and Demon realms. All they need to do is say they'll watch the competition, and they'll be able to come and go as they please. I've more or less guessed that, said Shwemo. Also, I saw quite a few Yaoan demons in the capital. The dean told us that the battle of geniuses won't be as simple as we thought. I didn't really understand before, but now it seems it really isn't as simple as I thought. Shwemo's gaze darkened. Combining this series of events, she naturally sensed that something wasn't right. Besides, she'd experienced the Yaoan demon's invasion of the northern Divine Mountain. She was even more vigilant than before. Everyone else in the hall had grave expressions on their faces. Shwebebe was the only one who didn't seem to care. Her head drooped, her hands covering her mouth as she yawned. From the looks of it, she really was exhausted. Yizichen took a deep breath, then crossed his arms over the tea table. Then he put his hands behind his back and smiled. We'll deal with soldiers with arms and water with earth. Furthermore, this is the divine capital, the most fortified location among the 9 divine mountains. Even if the Yaoan demons really wanted to pull any tricks, with the God Emperor's presence, they'd have to think twice before doing anything. We're just here to participate in the battle of geniuses. The rest has nothing to do with us. Let the higher-ups deal with all that scheming and scheming. All we need to do is deal with the battle of geniuses. He glanced at the yawning Shwebebe, then pressed his lips into a smile. Bebe, you're tired. Since the lot-drawing ceremony is tomorrow, you should all go back and get some rest. If the Yaoan demons are up to something, we'll have to wait until they do it. Then we can come up with a countermeasure. The others nodded and left. In truth, Shwemo wanted to talk more with Yizichen, but Bebe kept whining about going to bed. She had no choice but to take him back to his room. Before long, Yizichen was the only one left in the main hall. There were too many things that he had to think about in his mind, but he was too tired after the day, so he simply threw all of these things to the back of his mind and took out a communication jade slip from his bosom. This slip contained Lu Jing's contact information. Yizichen glanced at the sky, then hesitated for a moment before sending her a message. Hey! After sending the message, Yizichen's heart thumped wildly. He didn't know why, but he was indescribably nervous. However, a full hour passed, and he still hadn't received a reply. Yizichen muttered like a deflated balloon. She should be asleep by now. Chapter 1300. Who was Jiang Wei? Jiang Wei had just returned from the outside world, and he was dressed like this? Yizichen couldn't help but be astonished. Yizichen's nose twitched. He could vaguely sense the aura of Yaoan demons from Jiang Wei's body. When Jiang Wei saw Yizichen, he couldn't help but freeze. Then he turned and closed the door, his eyes flashing with shrewd light. Yizichen. Jiang Wei. The two of them called out each other's names. In an instant, Jiang Wei, who had always appeared aloof, revealed a smile. However, one could vaguely sense a faint coldness in that smile. In truth, I have a good impression of you, but since you saw something you shouldn't have. Whoosh! The rusted sword in his arms suddenly came out. The rusted sword circled around him, gradually forming a 3-foot sword defense. Yizichen furrowed his brows, but his vision had long since been filled with sword light. His mind spun frantically. He'd come out so late at night. And there was Yaoan demon energy. Don't tell me. When he looked at Jiang Wei, he crossed his arms and smiled arrogantly. His rusted sword was right in front of him. In an instant, countless beams of fragmented sword energy intertwined with each other. As the sword energy merged, Yizichen's vision gradually turned pure blue. As his pupils constricted, he realized that the sword energy was heading straight for him. This is Skyspan Academy's building. How dare Jiang Wei attack me right here? Yizichen's expression was solemn. Just as he'd thought, Jiang Wei's aura still lingered on him. He actually wanted to kill Yizichen right in front of the building. Wait for me to activate my god's altar and shatter this sword energy. Yizichen roared inwardly, but the instant he activated his god's altar, the azure, galaxy-like sword energy pierced through his entire god's altar. Brother Yi Zichen, wake up. He slowly opened his eyes and was greeted by the sight of Shui Mo's anxious face. Jiang Yong, Murong Shui, and the others were by her side. They were all staring at him nervously. He's awake, he's awake. Everyone in the room instantly surrounded him. Yi Zichen looked around with a frown. Only then did he realize that he was lying on the bed. He could not muster up any strength in his body, and his head was aching badly. Wasn't he supposed to be exchanging blows with Jiang Wei? Suddenly, Yi Zichen saw Jiang Wei leaning against the balcony, hugging his rusted sword and smiling at him. Jiang Wei said arrogantly as he left the balcony, "Since he's awake, there's no need to crowd around him. The lot-drawing ceremony will begin soon. If he didn't go, he would be disqualified. Seriously, he's about to become a celestial being, yet he can still faint, really." He shook his head and left the room. The other members of the navigators also followed him out of the room. Yi Zichen's eyes widened. He shouted Jiang Wei's name, but Shui Mo suppressed it. "All right, Jiang Wei's words aren't very pleasant, but it was him and the navigators who sent you here for treatment." "He healed?" Yi Zichen frowned. "That's right. When he and the Su brothers came downstairs, they saw you lying on the ground, your face pale. At the time, your soul was practically shattered and on the verge of bursting out of your body. It was Jiang Wei who fed you a soul-condensing pill, then called all of us over to find Qiu and Huai to treat you. That's how your soul didn't scatter," said Shui Mo. Murong Shui and Jiang Yong nodded. "When we arrived, your soul really was badly damaged. Even with the soul-condensing pill, it was on the verge of breaking apart. Jiang Wei used his divine power to help you reconstruct your soul, which is how you managed to hold on until the dean arrived." "So you're saying that Jiang Wei saved my life?" Yi Zichen was speechless. "That's right." Shui Mo and the others couldn't help but nod. Bullsh *T. Yi Zichen cursed as he lay on the bed. Did he really not know whether or not he was his savior? Jiang Wei had clearly attacked him out of nowhere, almost shattering his divine altar. He'd lost consciousness, and when he opened his eyes, he was in this state. "Let me tell you, actually." Just as Yi Zichen was about to tell them everything that had happened last night, he swallowed his words halfway. Jiang Wei had tried to kill him last night. There was no doubt about that. He knew Jiang Wei had the aura of Yao and demons on him. If he'd been allowed to live, the Academy would have definitely taken control of him. Even if they hadn't killed him outright, they'd at least have him investigated. But now he was alive, and Jiang Wei had fed him a soul-condensing pill. Not even a 12th-grade pill refiner could refine such a pill. Jiang Wei had used such an expensive pill to keep him alive and put on an act. There was no need at all. He might as well have just killed Yi Zichen. That would have been much more straightforward. That wasn't all. Just now, Shui Mo and the others had clearly pointed out that his soul had shattered when he'd fallen unconscious. In that case, the attack had most likely been on his spiritual sea. But Jiang Wei's attack had landed on his divine altar. In truth, Jiang Wei had been using a spiritual attack to attack his sea of consciousness. The attack on his divine altar had been nothing more than a facade. Yi Zichen instantly came to a decision, then knit his brows. He knit his brows and asked, "Is Jiang Wei skilled in spiritual attacks?" "That." Jiang Yong glanced at Murong Shui. Murong Shui knit her brows. "I'm really not sure, but I've never seen him use a spiritual attack. He's always been one man and one sword. I've never heard of a spiritual attack." "Then do any of you know where Jiang Wei was last night? What time did he go out? Or rather, where he was before dawn?" "Do you know?" asked Yi Zichen. "I know that." Dai Xiaoyan of the Appearance Association's Golden Flowers blushed. "He went into seclusion at noon yesterday and hasn't left since." "Are you sure?" Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. "Yes, he entered the secret chamber at noon. Since then, he has been staying in the secret chamber. He hasn't stepped out of the secret chamber at all." At least, it was like this before midnight. Dai Xiaoyan said with certainty. Our Yen girl is absolutely right about that. She's secretly in love with Jiang Wei. She's probably the clearest about Jiang Wei's whereabouts, teased Murong Shui. Dai Xiaoyan's face was bright red, and she pouted coquettishly. The others couldn't help but chuckle, but Yi Zichen's eyes widened. He'd never left. Chapter 1301. Someone else. From start to finish, Jiang Wei hadn't left his room at all. But last night, Yi Zichen had seen Jiang Wei enter in the wee hours of the morning and attacked him. Could it be that someone else was behind this? Although he suspected this, he couldn't completely trust Dai Xiaoyan's words. No one could confirm whether or not it was Jiang Wei who'd entered the room, or whether or not he'd used some other method to reach the outside world. Yi Zichen couldn't confirm any of this, but at the very least, he wouldn't say that Jiang Wei had attacked him last night. How strange. If it wasn't Jiang Wei, then who could it be? At this time, Jiang Wei had already brought a few members of the navigators to the arena. When he entered the arena, a few of his teams had already arrived. However, because both sides did not know each other, no one took the initiative to speak to the other. After finding the navigators' seats, Jiang Wei sat down, hugged his rusted sword, and closed his eyes. The Su brothers stood on either side of him. As they sized up the other teams, they couldn't help but frown. Is it really appropriate for us to keep hiding this? Jiang Wei didn't answer. Su Lei knit his brows and said, When we went downstairs, we clearly saw someone else in the main hall. He saw us and ran. Why didn't we tell them? The Su brothers and Jiang Wei had agreed on a time and left seclusion at the same time. They'd planned to go downstairs to find some food, but they just so happened to run into Yi Zichen, his soul on the verge of shattering. He was lying on the ground, barely breathing. A man dressed in black squatted in front of him, rummaging through his robes for who knew what. The appearance of the Su brothers and Jiang Wei gave the man in black quite a fright. He immediately gave up on searching for Yi Zichen and ran right through the wall. Jiang Wei chased after him, but by the time he stepped out of the door, he couldn't find any trace of him. He had no choice but to hurry back into the building, find a soul-condensing pill, and give it to Yi Zichen. At the same time, he woke up the other members of Anti-Upheaval and told Qiu and Huai to gather his soul. After escorting Yi Zichen to his room, Jiang Wei stood guard for the entire night, sword in hand. There's no need. Jiang Wei didn't even open his eyes. The Su brothers had no choice but to give up and sigh. Just who is that? Anti-Upheaval's Yi Zichen is no ordinary person. To be able to silently scatter his soul, one must at least be an expert at the celestial being realm or above. Not necessarily. Only then did Jiang Wei open his eyes and shake his head. Yi Zichen's soul had been shattered, and he'd suffered a spiritual attack. His realm was indeed very high, and his strength was not bad. However, he had spent too little effort on mental defense. If one wanted to shatter his sea of consciousness, they would only need to be slightly proficient in mental attack. The way Jiang Wei saw it, the chances of a diviner attacking Yi Zichen were extremely low. From the accommodations that the Divine Martial Academy had arranged for the Yaoan demons, it was clear that the Divine Capital was wary of the two realms. Most of the participants were at least Sky Supremes. Anyone below the Diviner realm wouldn't pose much of a threat to the students of the 9 Divine Mountains. Sovereigns weren't easy to monitor, but even if they didn't need to be monitored, sovereigns were always exposed to God Capital's control due to their unique bodies. As such, the Divine Capital's focus was naturally on celestial experts. Under such heavy surveillance, the Divine Capital would be able to capture a diviner before they could attack Yi Zichen. As such, the way Jiang Wei saw it, the chances of the person they'd seen on the first floor being a diviner were slim. In comparison, he was more inclined to believe that there might be someone among the students who were adept at spiritual attacks. His nerves were taut as he investigated everyone present. So long as that person showed up, Jiang Wei would be able to find him immediately. Within a certain room. The windows were sealed shut, and there was no light at all. A skinny man sat on the leather sofa in the living room, and there was another person standing behind him. "Are you sure?" A hoarse voice rang out from within the room. The man placed his hands on his abdomen, bowed, and said, "I'm not completely sure. It wasn't completely confirmed. When I was in the process of confirming it, I was discovered. However, there's an 80% chance that he isn't the Yellow Emperor's reincarnation." "Is that so?" "That's right. Everyone knows that the Yellow Emperor has two divine artifacts, the Xianyuan sword and the Yuan soul pearl. The Xianyuan sword is mainly used for attack, while the soul pearl Yuan is used for soul defense. This subordinate's mental attack easily penetrated his sea of consciousness without any resistance. This doesn't seem like a sea of consciousness protected by the soul pearl Yuan. You were discovered in the middle of the investigation, but that person didn't realize it was you, did he?" "I'm sure I didn't, but—" The person standing behind him wanted to say something but stopped. Then, he lifted up his clothes, revealing a silver-white sword mark on his back. "I've been marked by someone, but I can't erase it with my current cultivation level." As he spoke, the man seemed to recall something and hurriedly explained. "As soon as the mark was placed on me, I used my own cultivation to conceal it. The other party couldn't find me through the mark, but I can't be sure if I'll be able to. Come here and let me take a look." The man hurried over. Just as he'd said, he used his power to completely conceal the mark on his back. The silver mark on the blade was dark and dull. The skinny man glanced at it and couldn't help but nod. "No wonder you couldn't erase it. This mark was condensed from sword intent. It's obvious that the other party is an expert swordsman. He's probably at least a diviner. Only that little fellow called Jiang Wei is capable of observing the heaven span of the north." The people standing kept smiling apologetically. The skinny man said, "No matter. I'll help you erase it." As soon as he finished speaking, the skinny man placed his hand on the man's back. In an instant, the skinny man's palm turned red, and the back of the person standing in front of him began to emit green smoke. Large beads of sweat rolled down his forehead, and he gritted his teeth. By the time the skinny man lowered his hand, the mark on his back had already disappeared, but the skin there was completely charred. It was a terrifying sight to behold. "I'm done." The skinny man smiled calmly. The man in front of him endured the pain in his back, put down his robes, and turned back to respectfully thank him. "Thank you for your help, milord. You don't need to do this. This is my punishment for you. You made a mistake over such a small matter, almost ruining my entire game of chess. Fortunately, you still have some brains, and didn't let things get out of hand." The skinny man snorted coldly, rubbing his fingers. Chapter 1302. Chapter 1302. The abandoned Grizzly Bear Society. As time passed, more and more teams arrived to participate in the Battle of Geniuses. Jiang Wei had arrived early and narrowed his eyes. He quietly scanned the crowd with his divine power. At this moment, Jiang Wei, who was holding the rusted sword, frowned. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the ground. After a few breaths of time, he opened his eyes, his expression solemn. "They've been erased." He'd brought the navigators to the plaza so early so that he could land early and find out which faction he'd left his mark on last night. Although the other party had covered up his mark as soon as he'd left it, Jiang Wei had no way of following it. Most of it was because he was worried about Yi Zichen's condition, so he didn't pursue him too deeply. If he really wanted to forcefully establish contact with the mark, at the very least, Yi Zichen wouldn't be able to outrun him. However, since Yi Zichen was in danger, he gave up. Once Yi Zichen was out of danger, Jiang Wei tried to establish contact with the mark, but the other party had already run a certain distance away. That was why he decided to try and establish contact with the mark. If they were too far away, Jiang Wei had no way of contacting them. However, as long as they were within range of the plaza, He was completely confident in his ability to do so. He hadn't expected the other party to erase his mark. Interesting. The instant he sensed that the mark had been erased, Jiang Wei's lips curled into a smile. Although he could no longer use the mark to determine who had attacked Yi Zichen, more than 80% of the teams had arrived. At the very least, Jiang Wei could confirm that the attacker wasn't one of them. That meant there was a good chance that the teams that arrived later were the attackers. Suddenly, Jiang Wei's vision went dark. When he looked up, he saw that Anti-Upheaval, the Aspirations Society, and the Appearance Association had all arrived. Especially Yi Zichen, who stood in front of him with a complicated expression. He smiled at Jiang Wei. "Brother Jiang Wei, I still haven't thanked you for saving my life." Shuemo helped Yi Zichen along. A single soul-condensing pill wasn't enough to completely heal the damage to his soul. Even with Qiu and Huai's divine power, it would take a long time for his damaged soul to recover. "You're welcome," Jiang Wei replied coldly. As he spoke, he took out a bottle of pills and handed it to Jiang Wei. "The Soul Congregation pill is no ordinary pill. I can't take advantage of Brother Jiang Wei. This is the Soul Amassing pill. I'm returning it to you." Jiang Wei didn't take it, but Su Lei, one of the Su brothers, did. Just as Yi Zichen said, a soul-condensing pill was no ordinary pill. At the Skyspan Trading Company's auction house, a single pill would fetch at least 1,000,000 aureus. Back then, due to the urgency of the situation, the Su brothers hadn't thought it expensive when Jiang Wei fed Yi Zichen. After that, his heart ached to death. Now that Yi Zichen had returned the pill, how could he refuse? "Brother Yi, you're far too polite. We're all from Skyspan Academy. Anyone would have done the same thing when they saw you in trouble." Su Lei took the pills and chuckled. He pointed to the seats next to him and said, "Friends from Anti-Upheaval, the Aspirations Society, and the Appearance Association, why don't you all sit here? There's enough space for all 4 societies. We're all from Skyspan Academy, so we should get closer." What was rare was that Jiang Wei did not reject Su Lei's offer. Although they didn't know him very well, based on his usual behavior, it was clear that he disdained forming alliances with others. Whether it was in Skyspan Academy or anywhere else, he wouldn't get close to anyone. But this time, not only did he not refuse, but the seats around him. Coincidentally, there were enough seats for Anti-Upheaval, the Aspirations Society, and the Appearance Association. As soon as Su Lei finished speaking, Shuemo, Jiang Yong, and Murong Shui all looked at Yi Zichen. When the navigators saw this, they couldn't help but arch their brows. They never would have guessed that Yi Zichen's status was so high among all 3 societies. "In that case, it would be impolite of me to refuse." Yi Zichen smiled and nodded, then sat down with Shuemo's help. The Aspirations Society and Appearance Association took their seats as well. Skyspan Academy's 4 great societies were now united. Not far from them, the Grizzly Bear Society's Pang Jing, Di Long, and the others' eyes flashed darkly. They'd arrived earlier than Anti-Upheaval, and they'd tried to sit with the navigators, but they'd been refused. Now that all 3 societies had taken their seats, they were clearly ignoring the Grizzly Bears. "Brother Pang, what do you think?" Di Long narrowed his eyes at the 4 societies. Pang Jing snorted. "What else can I think? They've obviously formed an alliance and don't want us to get involved. But what's so strange about that? When we chose the wormhole and spatial transfer formations, we should have considered this outcome. Compared to them, we're too weak. Do we really have to stick with them?" Pang Jing furrowed his brows. "Everyone who came to the Towering Genius battle is an outstanding talent. Do we really have to limit ourselves to Skyspan Academy? Can't we form alliances with the other Divine Mountains student societies?" The Grizzly Bear's exclusion was nothing more than a minor interlude. The other participants were still marching into the plaza in an orderly fashion. During this time, Jiang Wei had been paying attention to the newcomers, while Yi Zichen had been quietly sizing him up. There was no way Yi Zichen could tell. Just as Yi Zichen was about to start a conversation, the atmosphere in the plaza suddenly heated up. Whether it was the gods, Yao, or demons, the atmosphere instantly heated up. Suddenly, countless high-pitched shouts rang out. "Your Highness, Lu Qing!" The one who spoke was a god. Yi Zichen looked to the entrance to the plaza. Lu Qing was dressed in long red robes, her eyes cold and arrogant. With every step she took, there would be an exquisite fire lotus beneath her feet. As she walked, she left 2 lines of fire lotuses in her wake. Beside her was a man wearing a black robe that covered his face. Although they were walking side by side, there was no communication between them. "Greetings, holy maiden." Practically all the demons half knelt and placed their hands in front of their chests, their expressions filled with respect. But that wasn't the end of it. Between them stood a haughty woman in icy robes. Then, the Queen of the Foxes. Chapter 1303. A pre-tournament battle, the atmosphere's heating up, said Xuemo. When she saw how excited the teams from the upper 3 realms were, she couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. It can't be any less lively. Suddenly, a low voice came from behind them. When they turned around, they saw Qiu and Huai standing in the audience and looking at the entrance. These 3 factions represent the pinnacle of the upper 3 realms. Rumor has it that Lu Jing of the 4 Directions Palace comprehended the true intent of fire a dozen years ago. She's long since reached the diviner level. The true intent of fire. It was a true intent that could only be comprehended when one used fire to its fullest potential. Yi Zichen couldn't help but smile. He hadn't expected Lu Jing to have grown so strong after so many years. Of course, he wasn't too surprised. Back in the modern realm, when she'd reconstructed her body, she'd had an immortal body. As soon as she was reconstructed, she was a peak sky immortal expert, and the 6 realms patroller had forcibly taken her to the god realm. That cloaked woman is the holy maiden of the Zhili clan. She's the youngest and most talented holy maiden of the entire demon race. She's also a diviner, said Qiuanhui, his gaze landing on her. There's also that woman in icy-colored robes. It's rumored that her 9-tailed Fox clan bloodline is so pure that even the current Fox clan leader can't compare to it. She's currently the most likely candidate to inherit the position of Fox clan leader. As for the 2 people by her side, one of them is called Su Yan. Her healing abilities are astonishing. The other is called Su Mei. We haven't heard much about her, so we don't know much about her. By the time Qiu and Huai finished introducing the 3 factions, the students of Skyspan Academy were so shocked they couldn't even speak. These people all had great backgrounds. It was no wonder that their entrance could cause a commotion in the entire square. More importantly, they were all above the celestial being level. How were they supposed to fight them? Inexplicably, Jiang Yong and the others looked at Jiang Wei. Among them, only sword immortal Jiang Wei might be a diviner. As expected, Jiang Wei did not disappoint them, even though the 3 teams that entered the arena were ridiculously strong. Even though the 3 factions were ridiculously strong, he didn't so much as open his eyes. Humph, what's the big deal? If Big Sister Beibei gets angry, none of them can beat you. Shui Beibei put her hands on her hips and snorted arrogantly. With Beibei's interruption, the heaviness in everyone's hearts dissipated a little. The surrounding people all smiled and nodded, praising Beibei's martial arts as #1 in the world. Queen of the Fox clan, Saintess of the Demon clan, I didn't expect the realm of monsters and demons to be willing to send the 2 of you here. Lu Qing, who had just entered the square, stopped. She ignored the noise from the seats and looked at the 2 girls beside her with a smile. The teams at the back still need to enter, so we, the 4-way pavilion, will go first. As she walked, a huge wave of fire rose up beside her. The power of the wave of fire seemed to be able to burn the heavens and the earth. He Su Luer let out an indifferent chuckle, then watched as snowflakes drifted down from above. Under the roasting of the fire, they turned into raindrops, weakening the fire. At the same time, the ground in front of Lu Jing, who was walking forward, completely turned into a smooth ice surface. There were even several sharp thorns growing out of the ice surface. If Lu Qing hadn't dodged in time, she would have died. If she hadn't dodged in time, she might have been injured. When she looked down, she saw that the ice had extended from beneath her feet, enveloping practically the entire arena. The competition hasn't even begun, but the three sides are already fighting? The spectators couldn't help but feel their hearts rise to their throats. However, after Su Luer had covered the arena with a layer of ice, "Little sister, let's go." Lu Jing, who was blocked by the ice, shook her head with a smile. Her light blue high heels were very steady on the ice. "The queen of the Fox clan is much stronger than I imagined." Her gaze instantly froze. A fiery dragon completely melted the ice in front of her, revealing the gravel beneath. "Let's go too." The God Realms teams all cheered loudly at the simple act of breaking the ice. By now, only the Holy Maiden's team remained. From start to finish, she hadn't said a single word, but everyone present was waiting to see what she'd do next. A short while after Lu Qing and the others left, the Holy Maiden made her move. How will the Holy Maiden break the ice? However, before long, the spectators were disappointed. She didn't unleash any dazzling techniques like they'd imagined. She simply followed her team and walked onto the ice. When she stepped on it, nothing happened. The spectators couldn't help but stare in shock. These three teams represented the most elite teams of the upper three realms. Their every move affected the morale of the other teams present. Just like that, he walked past without giving any response. Could it be that he was trying to hide his abilities? "Your Highness Lu Qing, we've already arranged a spot for you." Not long after Lu Qing left, a staff member from the Divine Martial Academy walked over and guided Lu Qing and the others to their positions. Yi Zichen froze despite himself. Why did it seem like she was walking in their direction? As soon as the thought occurred to him, it wasn't just Yi Zichen. Everyone else from Anti-Upheaval, the Aspirations Society, and the Appearance Association noticed it as well. "She seems to be walking in our direction, but do we have any seats left?" Luo Zi was a little doubtful as he asked. Soon after, he took a few glances at his surroundings. "Take a look around us." The seats were already full, but now they were empty. It was as if Skyspan Academy's students had taken over the entire bleachers. There were only 20 or so of them. What on earth is the Divine Martial Academy trying to do? Murong Shui couldn't help but frown. Only the Divine Martial Academy could do this. Furthermore, they deliberately invited Her Highness Lu Qing's team over. Is it because the Divine Martial Academy recognizes our strength and thinks we're on the same level as Her Highness Lu Qing's team? Is that why they're letting us sit together? Li Hu glared and laughed. As soon as he said this, Jiang Yong agreed. That's very likely. Can you guys stop being so stupid? Shui Mo and Murong Shui were speechless. Meanwhile, the staff member led Lu Qing to Yi Zichen's side. Your Highness Lu Qing, we're Anti-Upheaval from Skyspan Academy. I'm their president, Shui Mo. The instant Lu Qing arrived, Shui Mo stood up and greeted her with a smile. However, Lu Qing didn't lift a hand. She merely narrowed her eyes at Yi Zichen. Chapter 1304. Why are they all here? I knew it. I knew it. When he saw Lu Jing's angry expression, Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh inwardly. She must have assumed that Yi Zichen had arranged for her to sit close to him because of her status. But, was Yi Zichen really that bored? This wasn't like arranging deskmates at school. Who knew? Who knew? Maybe they'd grow fond of each other. This was just a lottery. The other Skyspan students looked at Lu Jing and Yi Zichen. They didn't seem to care about the awkwardness of Shui Mo's greeting. Would you believe me if I said no? Ha! Lu Qing only gave him a cold smile, but the meaning behind it was clear to see. Little did they know, as the strongest opponent of the Battle of Geniuses, Lu Jing had always been under Su Luer and the Holy Maiden's watch. When the staff led her to Yi Zichen, Su Lu'er and the others saw her. Yi Zichen. Su Lu'er couldn't help but knit her brows. Su Yan's hands trembled, then she lowered her head. In contrast, Chi Mei, who'd come with Su Lu'er and the others, smiled brilliantly and ran over to Yi Zichen. Mayor. When she saw that she couldn't stop Chi Mei from running over to Yi Zichen, Su Lu'er sighed in relief, then led her team over as well. At the same time, the Holy Maiden changed directions and headed back to Yi Zichen. Meanwhile, Lu Jing and Yi Zichen didn't say anything else. Lu Jing crossed her arms and sat in the back row. At that moment, the Yaoan dragons arrived. While they didn't notice the Dragon Clan's entrance, the Dragon Clan's team was slowly approaching them. Until, guess who I am? At some point, a pair of soft, white hands covered Yi Zichen's eyes. The Skyspan Academy students were already dumbfounded. They hadn't even noticed how she'd gotten here. However, they didn't bother her because based on her tone, she knew Yi Zichen and they were very familiar. Yi Zichen stiffened when he heard her voice. Even after 100 years, he definitely wouldn't forget her. But, sweetie, I've missed you so much. A delicate figure suddenly burrowed into his arms, and his hands around Yi Zichen loosened. The instant Yi Zichen opened his eyes, he saw Chi Mei lying in his arms like a kitten, rubbing her face against his chest. What's going on? Shui Mo, Jiang Yong, Murong Shui, and the others all stared at each other in confusion. Weren't these the people who'd come with the Fox Queen? Why were they here as well? Then, look at how much she liked Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen! Shui Beibei put her hands on her hips and shouted angrily. She knew about Shui Honghong and Yi Zichen's 10-year promise. When he heard Bibi's angry roar, Yi Zichen hurriedly pushed Chi Mei away. Are we familiar with each other? Woo! Chi Mei looked like she was about to cry. She looked at him pitifully. You don't want me anymore? Big Sister Lu'er, he's playing with my feelings. Chi Mei covered her face and threw herself into Su Lu'er's arms. When Yi Zichen heard that, he looked up and saw Su Lu'er's murderous gaze. As for Su Yan, when she looked at him, she seemed a bit disappointed. Big Sister Lu'er, I'm so sad. Chi Mei pretended to sob in Su Lu'er's arms. Su Lu'er patted her on the back, then glanced coolly at Yi Zichen. Mayor Lil Yen, let's go. She couldn't be bothered to talk to Yi Zichen any longer, but to her surprise, Chi Mei suddenly jumped out of Su Lu'er's arms. I don't want to. I want to stay here and keep an eye on those little vixens around Yi Zichen. I want to see just what kind of magic potion they fed my sweetie, to the point that he doesn't want me anymore. As she spoke, Chi Mei looked like she was about to cry again. Shui Beibei put her hands on her hips and cursed. You're the vixen. Hey little girl, you're so smart. I'm a vixen, and a 9-tailed fox at that. Chi Mei's sobbing expression instantly faded, and she smiled mischievously. Shui Beibei nearly choked on her words. She glared at Yi Zichen. You can't let her stay here. Big Sister Lu'er, let's just stay here. Little Sister Yan, you want to stay here too, don't you? Laughed Chi Mei. Before Su Yan could answer, she received a transmission in her sea of consciousness. She was startled for a moment, and then she raised her head to take a glance before nodding. When she saw Su Yan nod, Chi Mei acted as if she'd just won a battle. She reached out and tapped Beibei on the head. Little girl, this isn't your sea of innocence. We can sit wherever we want. Then we won't be staying here. Let's go. Shui Beibei fumed and turned to leave. Yi Zichen's head felt like it was about to explode, but this was only the beginning. Let's sit here too. A gentle voice rang out in everyone's ears. Only then did they realize that the demon race's holy maiden had also arrived with her team. What's going on? Shui Mo and the others glanced at each other, even more confused. What are you doing here? Shui Beibei was fighting alone to protect her big sister's love. Chi Mei was enough to make her feel wronged, but now the holy maiden had popped up. Oh, you're here too? Chi Mei snorted. She wasn't too surprised. You. Yi Zichen's head was already starting to swell. Just now, her tone sounded just like, long time no see. Are you alright? As she spoke, the holy maiden took off her hat, revealing a nervous, flushed face. Sun Yij. As Yi Zichen watched, Sun Yij's blush deepened. She lowered her head, bit her lip, and nodded. Sorry to disturb you. Without waiting for an explanation, she found a seat near Yi Zichen and sat down. Interesting. 2 souls, huh? Chi Mei chuckled, then followed Su Yan and the others to find an empty seat and sit down. Yi Zichen, I don't like this place. Shui Bebe looked like she was about to cry. Her eyes brimmed with grief. Shui Mo reached out and patted Shui Bebe on the head. That's enough, Bebe. Don't cause trouble. It's not convenient for us to switch seats. But Shui Mo repeatedly comforted Shui Bebe. Surrounded by Chi Mei and the others, Yi Zichen felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. For some reason, he felt somewhat disappointed. He'd thought she'd come back. That tone sounded just like her. Yi Zichen's heart was filled with sorrow. He glanced behind him, then froze in place. At the same time, he saw a young woman wave at him and smile. Chapter 1305. In Shang, you've worked hard. The girl's smile was playful, and she waved her hands back and forth. The entire world seemed to come to a standstill. Yi Zichen looked quietly at the girl, who stood nearby with her hands behind her back. His lips quivered, and his eyes revealed a hint of a smile. At the same time, hot tears welled up in his eyes from the gratitude of recovering what he'd lost. But, Big Brother Zichen, I've missed you so much. Before Yi Zichen could say anything else, another figure flew into his arms. When he looked closely, he saw that it was Zhuge Kongming in his arms. That wasn't all. Behind him were Little White, whom he'd met at the foot of the Divine Mountains, and the Minister of the Left, Yin Shang, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. They'd all come to participate in the battle of geniuses as representatives of various factions. They'd only noticed Yi Zichen because he'd caused quite a commotion. It would have been difficult not to notice him. The Yao foxes and dragons had all rushed over, and the Holy Maiden of the Demon Realm was here as well. By now, Yi Zichen was the center of attention. In just a few short minutes, Yi Zichen had left a deep impression on everyone's hearts. Xia! Yi Zichen wanted to say something, but Zhuge Kongming burst into tears like a child. I thought I'd never see you again, Big Brother Zichen. I was so excited. Tears and snot flowed from Zhuge Kongming's eyes and mouth. Hey, these are my new clothes. If you want to cry, can't you go somewhere else? Yi Zichen tried to push Zhuge Kongming away, but Zhuge Kongming stuck to him like a magnet. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get away. Fine. If you want to cry, I'll hug you and cry. Can you move aside for now? No. Everyone laughed. The girl standing behind Zhuge Kongming couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. When he saw her smile, Yi Zichen couldn't help but laugh too. He laughed without restraint, and he laughed without restraint. None of that mattered. It didn't matter what had happened back then. It didn't matter if she was dead or alive. Now, she was standing right in front of him. What was there to look into? She was still herself, the cute girl who always called him Big Brother Zichen. For some reason, even Lu Jing felt a sense of familiarity when she saw Zhuge Kongming and Little White. Moreover, these people gave him a very harmonious feeling. Inspired by the people around her, she, who was as cold as ice, also wanted to laugh. However, when she noticed Yi Zichen's gaze, she subconsciously glanced towards the girl behind him, who was covering her mouth and giggling, then looked back at the girls in front of her, Lecher. Lu Jing coldly snorted and turned her head away. She really didn't know what His Majesty and Lady Providence were thinking. Why would they want her to date someone like that? Did she not have enough red strings by her side? Zhuge Kongming finally left Yi Zichen's embrace. However, his Fire Phoenix clan, Little White's Celestial Dog clan, and Yinshang's entourage all sat down around Yi Zichen. The seats that Shen Wu had purposely cleared out were now not enough. The staff specially added a few more chairs for them, and only then was everyone able to sit down. As for why the staff had added chairs, the Dragon Clan, the Fox Clan, and the Phoenix Clan were the strongest powers of the Yao Clan. Needless to say, there were also the Holy Maidens of the Yao Clan. The entire Demon Clan only had 9 Holy Maidens. Yinshang represented the Northwest Divine Mountain, and Lu Jing represented the 4 palaces. What kind of people were they? Would they dare provoke them? The one they feared the most was Yi Zichen. It seemed that they'd all gathered here because of him. Just who was this youth? How could he be acquainted with such peak-level factions? The staff were shocked, and so were the others. They focused almost all of their attention on Yi Zichen. They didn't pay any attention to the other groups. The same was true for Shuemo and the others. Just what kind of person are you? Shuemo looked at the crowded seats and the various factions they represented. She couldn't help but sigh inwardly. It was entirely possible to say that Yi Zichen was the central hub, connecting the 3 major factions. None of these powers were ordinary. Any one of them could cause the entire 3 realms to tremble. Jiang Wei of the Navigators opened his eyes to take a look, but he wasn't as shocked as the others. However, his smile only grew wider and wider. They'd clearly come to participate in the battle of geniuses, but now it was as if Yi Zichen had joined a gathering of old friends. Not all of them knew each other, but a few were familiar with each other. As they chatted, the atmosphere was so harmonious that they couldn't help but smile. Of course, most of them were excited to see Yi Zichen. The most excited of them all had to be Yinshang. As the Emperor Star's auxiliary star, he'd personally witnessed the Emperor Star's fall. Ever since then, he'd returned to the God realm, constantly reminding himself that the Emperor Star wouldn't fall so easily. He'd even gone to great lengths to establish a faction for the Emperor Star. He'd been waiting for Yi Zichen's return. Fortunately, he'd finally arrived. He really wanted to be like Zhuge Kongming, but he suppressed his excitement. He repeatedly reminded himself that he was the Emperor Star's auxiliary star, and also the leader of the students. At this time, even if he was excited, he had to make sure that he behaved properly. Until, Yinshang, you've worked hard. Yi Zichen's simple greeting caused tears to well up in the eyes of the famed fatty of the Divine Mountains. No one knew how anxious he'd been over the past 100 years, and he wouldn't tell anyone. But it was this greeting that touched the softest part of his heart. He could only cover his reddened eyes with his hands and silently shook his head. When Little White saw this, he smiled calmly. Others might not know, but he'd been in contact with Yinshang all this time. He knew exactly how much Yinshang had paid to welcome Yi Zichen back. Yinshang's companions' eyes flashed with astonishment. They knew all too well how strict Yinshang was normally. However, with just a simple sentence from that person, Senior Yinshang seemed to have. He was crying. Then there were the people sitting here. Yao and demons were all here, but they coexisted so harmoniously. Wasn't it said that the relationship between the 3 realms was very ambiguous? Why was it that the 3 realms could sit together at the same time without any conflicts? All of this was too shocking, but due to Yinshang's usual sternness, they could only quietly size him up. Chapter 1306. A riot. Yi Zichen's sudden turn of events had thrown the arena into a strange, chaotic atmosphere. The representatives of all 3 upper realms were paying close attention to what was going on. After all, Yi Zichen's team represented the most elite teams of the God, Yao, and Demon realms. Their factions represented all 3 realms as well. Quite a few people couldn't help but knit their brows. How could they sit so harmoniously under these circumstances? They chatted and laughed, but there was no sign of conflict. How could you? How could our saintess sit together with those filthy demons and deceitful humans? This won't do. If this goes on, the Holy Maiden will definitely be in danger. I have to go save her. On the seats in the northern part of the square, A bare-armed demon man with a sharp horn on his head glared angrily. "Hey, what did you just say about us, Yao?" Before he could move, he felt a hand the size of a prayer mat pat him on the shoulder, and heard a deep, low whisper. When he turned around, he saw a shadow looming over him. A brawny, 3-meter-tall man was glaring at him with eyes the size of bronze bells. "Did you just call us Yao filthy little ant?" Compared to the others, the demon expert was small, but in the face of this brawny Yao, he was so tiny he wasn't even worth a mention. "I'm talking about you." "What about it?" To his surprise, the demon expert wasn't afraid in the slightest. He stared straight at him, his eyes flashing with a bewitching violet light. Next, he grabbed the Yao expert's hand and sent the 3-meter-tall man spinning in the air. He spun in a circle, then slammed into the ground. "Filthy Yao," spat the demon expert. The devil race expert even spat. This immediately angered the demon race. Countless demon race experts stood up from their seat. The troublemaker smiled nonchalantly and said, "What? You filthy demon race, don't tell me you dare to attack us?" The demons instantly rose to their feet and met the Yao's gaze. The war between the monster race and demon race was about to break out. The people in the other seats gradually noticed the situation here. Realizing that the people on their side were about to exchange fire, the monster race and demon race in the other seats also rushed over. The staff were anxious. Although there were celestial beings among them to maintain order, in such a chaotic situation, even celestial beings were useless. This had escalated to a conflict between the two realms, and they did not have the ability or qualifications to interfere at all. "Hurry up and notify the God Emperor's estate." More and more Yao and demons gathered in the plaza. The people from the various divine mountains retreated, leaving the main battlefield to the two realms. Some people had heard the demon race say that the human race was cunning, but this seemed to be the truth, so they did not get angry. Who would have thought that the demon race would have such a bad temper? "Do you dare to say that again in front of us?" "So what if I say it? You bunch of filthy beasts, hurry up and stay away from me. The stench you produce when you gather together makes me sick." Swoosh! Icicles pierced through the air. The demon expert felt a chill on his cheek, then a trickle of purple blood slid down his cheek. "If you dare say another word, these icicles will be aimed at your throat." An icy warning slowly spread through the air. The crowd looked up and saw Su Lu-er's expression as cold as ice. Her palms were still in the middle of releasing icicles, and she looked down at the demons with a condescending gaze. "The Queen of the Foxes!" The Yao cried out. Little White, who'd rushed over as well, couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. The Empress is still the Empress of the past. Whether it's in the lower realms or the upper realms, she's as mighty as ever. So this is the Queen of the Foxes, the one rumored to inherit the position of clan head? The Foxes are truly lucky. The dragon expert couldn't help but sigh. "What? Is your dragon race unlucky? Are you trying to say that I can't compare to Big Sister Lu-er?" The dragon race expert frowned angrily. "How could that be? You were personally chosen by the dragon god. You are the future hope of our dragon race," said the expert with a wry smile. "Humph! I'm angry." The girl crossed her arms, wrinkled her nose, and turned her head away. When the dragon race experts saw this, they couldn't help but smile wryly. She'd been like this ever since she'd arrived. They'd long since gotten used to it. Big Sister Lu really lives up to her reputation as a nine-tailed fox clan head. She's the one with the bloodline closest to the fox clan's sacred ancestor. Her control of the ice element is truly... I can't help but be envious. Chi Mei tilted her head and couldn't help but sigh. Then she looked at Su Yen. "Isn't that right, Lil Yen?" And Su Yen nodded vigorously. In her eyes, Lu-er had always been strong. It was also because of Su Lu-er's strength that Su Yen and Su Zhu could always feel at ease. Why did the demon race and demon race suddenly start fighting? Should we intervene? Li Hu's eyes widened. He didn't quite understand what was going on. This fight was far too sudden. Their three factions had been living in harmony, but this side had suddenly started fighting without any warning. Intervene my ass. Jiang Yong almost spat on Li Hu's face. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can intervene just because you say so? This has already escalated to a conflict between two realms. You're just a little piece of trash who hasn't even reached the diviner realm, yet you want to intervene. You must be out of your mind. Then should we just watch? Asked Li Hu. Nonsense, said Jiang Yong. In a situation like this, the people here will definitely notify the God Emperor's estate. When the time comes, the God Emperor's estate will send people over and naturally suppress the situation, said Jiang Yong. What I'm afraid of is that before the God Emperor's estate arrives, someone from either side will die. If that happens, it won't be easy to handle, said Morong Shui. Queen of the Foxes. The troublemaker wiped the blood off his face and licked it with his tongue. Apologize to the Yao who was injured. Su Lu Er's expression remained completely emotionless. She didn't even open her mouth. Instead, she transmitted her words through transcendental transmission. The Yao who'd been thrown to the ground had already been carried out by one of the other clansmen. Judging from his sunken back, it seemed that the bones near his spine had been shattered. Whoosh! Another icicle shot out of Su Lu Er's hand. This one landed right in front of the demon expert. Apologize. You want me to apologize to a filthy wild boar? Keep dreaming, laughed the demon expert arrogantly. Then go to hell. The icicle shot out of Su Lu Er's hand. It was so fast that the demon expert had no chance of dodging. Everyone thought he was going to die, but suddenly, a black curtain appeared in front of his throat. The sharp icicle pierced right through, landed 100 meters away, and shattered. Then, as the crowd watched, the holy maiden lowered her head and chuckled, as if she were talking to herself. Chapter 1307. Su Luer and the Holy Maiden. Chapter 1308. The God Emperor, in seclusion. The God Emperor's estate. The heat from the active volcano's geysers dyed the surrounding area a faint red. Heat waves that could be seen with the naked eye surged over. Under such heat, even if an immortal king came here, he would be roasted to ashes by this heat. It was simply too hot. Occasionally, boiling lava spewed out of the volcano's mouth. Some of it flowed into the pond outside the volcano, but most of it gathered in front of a thatched hut at the foot of the volcano. Not only did the thatched cottage survive the scorching lava, but there were also layers of dark green vines crawling around the cottage. It was a bit of decoration for this fiery world. A white-robed clergyman stood in front of the hut, a book in his hands. Beside him stood a staff member who'd rushed to the God Emperor's estate from the lot-drawing plaza to ask for help. This was a diviner expert, and he'd spared no effort in using his divine power to create a protective barrier around the hut. Even so, he was sweating profusely, his mouth parched, as if all the water in his body were about to evaporate. The God Emperor is in seclusion. It's best if we don't disturb him. The staff member panicked. Both sides were on the verge of fighting. The God Emperor needed to take charge, but he was in seclusion. Your Excellency Divine Arbiter, the demons and Yao are already locked in a fierce battle. At a time like this, only Lord God Emperor can step forward and make a decision that won't be biased. The God Emperor is in seclusion, repeated the Divine Arbiter. Then what do we do about the other side? Are we just going to let them continue? They've already started fighting before I arrived. If we delay any longer, there will definitely be casualties. What if the Demon Realm and Yao Realm use this matter to cause trouble for the God Realm? Asked the staff member. I told you, the God Emperor is in seclusion. No matter how serious the problem is, we'll have to wait until he comes out, said the Divine Arbiter. The Divine Arbiter's words infuriated the staff, so much so that their hands trembled. Seclusion. Seclusion. All he could say was that he was in seclusion. Couldn't he see that the God Emperor was in seclusion? He'd only asked to get a solution. But the divine arbiter didn't seem to understand human language. All she could think about was the God Emperor's seclusion. It was fine if he didn't care. The staff member who came to look for the God Emperor also understood that he was just a temporary guest staff member from another family clan. He had come to report to the God Emperor because he cared about the divine realm and did not want the divine realm to get into any unnecessary trouble under such circumstances. That was why he had come to look for the divine realm. But at the end of the day, he wasn't a member of the God Emperor's estate. Although he was under the jurisdiction of the God Emperor's estate, he didn't work there. Even if the people of the monster and demon realms fought and someone died, they would look for the God Emperor. They would not look for a small character like him. All right. Please remember this, Divine Arbiter. I, Lu Wei, came to report the situation. It was you who kept saying that the God Emperor was in seclusion. If something really goes wrong and the God Emperor blames us, don't blame it on us, the clans that have worked so hard for the God Emperor's estate. Lu Wei glared coldly at the Divine Arbiter, then waved his hand and left the volcano. It just so happened that he didn't want to stay in this damned place. He had almost been roasted into a jerky just now. He hurriedly left the vicinity of the volcano. What he wanted to do now was to quickly find a water source and drink to his heart's content for 3 days and 3 nights. Your Excellency, the Lu family has left. To his surprise, not long after Lu Wei left the volcano, the thatched cottage's door swung open. The person who emerged was practically drenched in lava. However, as soon as he stepped out, the thatched cottage's vines sucked up all the lava, revealing the man's true appearance. Waves of heat radiated from him, so hot that they seemed capable of burning the heavens and the earth. They were no weaker than the lava erupting from the volcano. A waterfall of magical rain fell from the sky, splashing onto his body and releasing a white mist. The white mist enveloped the entire volcano, causing smoke to swirl around it. Beneath the clouds and mist, a refreshing breeze blew past, dispersing the white mist. It's good that he's gone. Only then did the person who emerged from the thatched cottage speak. The Divine Arbiter walked up to him. Lu Wei came to report that the monster and demon realms are fighting. I think his words make sense. We can't allow the monster and demon realms representatives to die in the battle of geniuses at this time. Do you think the Lu family is loyal? The man asked. Judging from Lu Wei's expression, it seems his heart is tied to the God realm. However, I dare not speculate on his true thoughts. However, I am absolutely loyal to the God Emperor, said the Divine Arbiter. I know you're loyal. You're the person I trust the most. The man pulled the Divine Arbiter into his arms and removed her hat. Her long, beautiful hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. You're also the person I dote on the most. Your Excellency. The Divine Arbiter's gaze grew distant. The man hugged her by the waist and snorted. Let them cause a ruckus at the battle of geniuses. When the time comes, someone will naturally take care of it. There's no need for us to worry about it. OL Lu, you're back. When the staff saw Lu Wei return, they couldn't help but crowd around him. Although the Yao races Su Lu and the demon's holy maiden hadn't truly clashed yet, the area around them had already become a battlefield of carnage. Fighting would only take a single thought. Has the God Emperor arrived? Although there were quite a few ruler-level experts present, there was nothing they could do to stop them. Without a certain level of status, people would start gossiping. Only the God Emperor would appear in this situation. That way, it wouldn't seem biased. Everyone was waiting for the God Emperor to arrive, but... What are you talking about? The God Emperor is in seclusion. He can't come. Then. What then? Just watch. I've already reported it to the higher-ups. If something really happens, the higher-ups will take care of it. What are you guys panicking about? Lu Wei had a stomach full of anger and had nowhere to vent it, so he spoke in a strange tone. Then he ignored the staff and turned his gaze to Su Luer and the demon's holy maiden. fight. It was better to kill them all. The state of the heroes of the god race could be described by the agitated crowd. The demon's holy maiden's words had provoked them quite a bit. Don't you think that demon general is a bit too young? Just as the crowd was getting excited, Jiang Wei of the Navigators actually said something like that. He can talk. Oh my god, I thought he was mute. Qi Mei looked at Jiang Wei in astonishment. The others looked at him as well. Yi Zichen nodded. He is indeed a bit frighteningly young. What, did you sense something, Brother Jiang? Chapter 1309. A breath of ice. Hey, don't you guys feel a lot colder? At this moment, Luo Zi, who was holding a folding fan, inserted the folding fan into his bosom. He hugged his arms and shivered. When Li Hu heard this, he laughed uproariously. He was just about to pat Luo Zi on the shoulder and mock him for being too thin. However, before he could even reach out, he rubbed his arms involuntarily. His eyes widened so much that when he opened his mouth, they could clearly see his white breath. It's really King cold. It wasn't just them. Everyone else in the plaza sensed something was wrong. At that moment, Qi Mei, Su Luer, and a few other fox experts ran over to them. Sweetie, why are you just standing there? Hurry up and run. Big Sister Lu's really scary when she's angry. Only then did Yi Zichen and the others notice that Su Luer had become the eye of a storm, spewing out frigid air. Under this chill, even the flow of air around him seemed to have solidified. Li Hu took something from his spatial ring to ward off the cold, but he still crossed his arms and shivered. It looks like they're going to fight. I don't care what you say. Su Luer stood in the air and smiled coldly. Her beautiful eyes held no hint of emotion whatsoever. She raised her hand and stared indifferently at the holy maiden of the demon race. Streams of frosty air flowed out of her body and into the surroundings. Apologize. The holy maiden faced the frigid air directly, a strange smile on her pretty face. She licked her lips with her pink tongue and spread her fingers, allowing the waves of air to pass through her palms. How could a demon general of the demon race apologize to you? Have you thought it through? Asked Su Luer. I haven't thought it through. It's inevitable. If you can't swallow the anger in your heart, then use your power to conquer me, okay? I've always had a strong desire to be subdued. That's exactly what I wanted. Su Luer's lips curved into a smile. Then her icy voice echoed throughout the plaza. All Yao, retreat 1,000 meters. All members of the demon race, retreat 1,000 meters, the holy maiden said. Immediately, all the demons and monsters that had come to participate in the battle of geniuses retreated frantically. The Protoss experts present were not stupid. Both the monster race and demon race had retreated, but they were still standing there in a daze. Was there something wrong with their brains? In just a few breaths of time, it was hard to see anyone within 1,000 meters of Su Luer and the Holy Maiden. Qi Mei, who was still in the same spot, couldn't help but shrink back. As she watched the retreating army, she tugged on Yi Zichen's arm and shouted, "Let's go. Big Sister Luer is really angry this time. If we don't leave now, we'll all be left here." Her icy breath attacks indiscriminately. Otherwise, she wouldn't have ordered the demon clan to retreat. Don't think that she would deliberately take care of us. We have to stop them. Yi Zichen frowned. Boom. Just a few seconds after she spoke, the frosty air around her grew tens of times stronger than before. A piercingly cold wave of air froze the surrounding air, making it difficult to breathe. It was just as Qi Mei had said. Su Luer, who'd unleashed her breath of ice, didn't care about them in the slightest. As she unleashed her aura, she barely even glanced at Yi Zichen and the others. Under the roar of the icy breath, the entire venue was covered in a layer of frost. Jiang Wei gripped his rusted sword and used his sword defense to keep the icy breath at bay. At the same time, he furrowed his brows and roared, "Stop dreaming. Look at the current situation clearly. Do you really think you can stop them with just that wave of frigid air?" At this moment, The only person who had a reason to stop all of this without being criticized by others was probably Lu Jing of the four-way pavilion. But did you see her make a move? She didn't. I know you know both of them and don't want to see weapons clashing, but you have to understand your place. Let's go. Chi Mei grabbed Yi Zichen's arm and retreated 1,000 meters away. Little did they know, Su Luer was actually looking out for them. Or perhaps it was more accurate to say that she only wanted to look out for Su Yen and the others, who hadn't yet retreated. She didn't seem to pay much attention to the outside world, but as soon as Yi Zichen and the others retreated, she focused. Whoosh whoosh. The icy breath grew even colder. The cultivators of the upper three realms, who'd retreated 1,000 meters away, felt the cold wash over them. Without any hesitation, they hurriedly retreated. Only after retreating another 1,000 meters did they feel less unbearable. After all, even the Sky Supremes, who'd retreated several thousand meters away, shivered from the lingering effects of the icy breath. The Holy Maiden stood at the center of the maelstrom, yet she smiled as if nothing had happened. So this is the Fox Clan's icy breath, but it's a bit too weak. The Holy Maiden stood proudly in the air, using her body to feel the chill of the icy breath. She waved her right hand and no more cold energy could enter within 100 meters. Su Luer's expression didn't change when she saw this. Suddenly, the icy aura she spewed out suddenly condensed into several tornadoes. 9 tornadoes, mixed with ice and snow, revolved around Su Luer. After the tornadoes appeared, the frigid air flowed even faster and even colder. The icy breath instantly broke through the Holy Maiden's 100-meter wall of air. The frigid air slammed into her, causing her body to tremble violently. Wah! Only when the tornadoes appeared did the Holy Maiden reveal a hint of surprise. No wonder the Queen of the Fox Clan is second only to the Empress. Qiu and Huai and the other god race rulers stood 1,000 meters away in the sky. They clicked their tongues in admiration as they watched Su Luer rise and fall. This Su Luer. I accept giving her the position of clan head. When she saw this, Chi Mei's eyes lit up. She was secretly amazed, but she didn't tell anyone about it. Although she was also a member of the Fox Clan and called Su Luer Big Sister, her identity was actually rather special. Previously, when the Fox Empress had prepared to hand over the position of clan head to Su Luer, she'd still held a grudge. Of course, she wasn't really interested in the position, but if it was given to her, she'd give it a try. But now, she'd changed her stubborn mind. The same goes for the Holy Maiden. That black curtain she just unleashed was actually a simplified version of Nightmorn. As far as I remember, she's the only demon king capable of unleashing Nightmorn. Humph, I never would have guessed someone as proud and arrogant as her would choose to reincarnate. Chi Mei chuckled, then her gaze fell upon the Holy Maiden. Chapter 13:10. Sun Yaij begging for death. The people of the three realms, who had retreated to a safe distance, couldn't help but feel their scalps go numb. This breath of ice was simply too terrifying. Even though Su Luer was a member of the Yao realm, the Yao clansmen couldn't help but be shaken. Although they were from the Demon Clan, they were not from the Fox Clan. Su Luer's breath of ice didn't just shake the Demon and God realms, it shocked the other Yao clans as well. Are they sure they're here to participate in the battle of geniuses? If we fight them, won't we just be throwing our lives away? Some people in the crowd were already cursing and swearing. They really had been frightened by Su Luer's icy aura. An ice breath had driven all of them thousands of meters away. Furthermore, if the ice breath was slightly stronger, they would constantly be pushed back. However, this ice breath also clearly made the participants realize who was stronger and who was weaker. Those with lower cultivation levels could only keep retreating, but those with higher cultivation levels were able to resist the invasion of the cold breath. They did not need to retreat too much. Hey, what do you think they are doing here? Li Hu swung his arms and used his divine power to maintain his body temperature. He looked at the group of people who were still shivering 100 meters behind him. Aren't they all here to die? Do you think we're not here to die? Jiang Yong glared at him. The Holy Maiden and the Empress of the Foxes are both here to participate in the battle of geniuses. They sent us flying 1,000 meters with a single blast of ice. In front of them, aren't we here to die? It's not enough to compete with the top, but it's more than enough to compete with the bottom. Li Hu was quite optimistic. He grinned and laughed. But it's a bit too much for them to participate in the tournament of geniuses. Aren't they all at the celestial being realm? How come? The celestial realm is the general term for those who have reached the peak of the celestial realm, said Morong Shui. Anti-Upheaval, the Aspirations Society, the Navigators, and the Appearance Association couldn't help but roll their eyes. They had thought that Jiang Wei might be able to put up a fight against them, but now it seemed, what's there to fight? The demon race and Yao race are deliberately trying to slap our god race's face. The two of them came up to us and showed us their strength. Who can deal with them? Isn't he standing in front? Morong Shui pouted. Standing at the very front was the four-way pavilion's Lu Jing. She was standing 1,000 meters away from where they had retreated for the first time. Her body was surrounded by a blue, ice-like flame. The flame wrapped around her, making it impossible for the ice breath to approach her. They're all freaks. Li Hu sighed. The battle of geniuses this time had really dealt a heavy blow to him. He had originally thought that he was more talented, but compared to this group of people, he was nothing. Turned into dregs. This feels a little like the icy breath. The Holy Maiden couldn't help but nod at the tornado's appearance. She waved her hand back and forth, and several black curtains appeared around her. After the ice breath entered the black curtain, it seemed to have jumped through space and landed hundreds of meters away. Just then, the smile on the Holy Maiden's face suddenly changed. The black curtain she had just set up gradually disappeared. He grabbed his hair fiercely with both hands and seemed to have fallen into a state of madness. Her pupils changed from purple to black, and then back to purple. As the ice breath invaded her body, a thick layer of ice gradually formed over it. Finally, the Holy Maiden was completely encased in ice. She fell to the ground like an ice sculpture. Even Su Luer couldn't help but stare blankly. Just now, she sensed that the Holy Maiden's cultivation had suddenly become extremely unstable, fluctuating between high and low. After sealing the Holy Maiden in ice, she instinctively retracted her breath of ice. Holy Maiden! The demon experts who'd been keeping an eye on the situation rushed over as soon as the ice breath disappeared. The demon sovereign was even more enraged, but as he was rushing over, the Yao sovereign blocked his path. What's going on? Li Hu's eyes widened in bewilderment. Just now, everything had been fine. How come she'd suddenly been sealed? This Fox Queen is too terrifying, isn't she? Even the Holy Maiden isn't her match? Something's not right, said Jiang Wei and Yi Zichen practically simultaneously. Let's go over and take a look. The battle between Su Luer and the Holy Maiden felt a bit anticlimactic. Or perhaps it was more accurate to say that the Holy Maiden had started anticlimactic. She'd clearly looked like she'd seen through everything, but in the end, she'd been sealed in ice before she'd even had a chance to attack. Holy Maiden. To a Sky Supreme, a few thousand meters was nothing more than the blink of an eye. By the time the demon experts arrived, all they saw was the Holy Maiden, completely encased in ice. She really is frozen, said Li Hu, peeking in from afar, astonished. At that moment, Su Luer descended from the sky. Fox Queen, do you want to start a war with us demons? Hurry up and break the Holy Maiden's seal. Otherwise, once we report this to the Demon Emperor, the demon army will trample your Yao realm to the ground. Roared the demon experts. They didn't dare rashly break the ice. No one knew how cold the ice was, or if the process of breaking the ice would hurt the Saintess inside. Or rather, during the process of breaking the ice, the Holy Maiden's body would shatter into ice crystals and perish. This wasn't a responsibility they could bear. Are you talking to me? It was a simple glance, but the demon expert who'd spoken felt a chill run down his spine. He forcefully swallowed the words he was about to say, but then, crack! Faint cracks appeared in the ice surrounding the Holy Maiden. The cracks continued to spread until finally, it completely shattered. The Holy Maiden chuckled as she walked out of the ice. Excitement flashed in the eyes of the experts, while the Yao and divine races were dumbfounded. "What's going on?" asked Su Luer coolly. "There was a small accident," laughed the Holy Maiden. "Just now, my little cutie tried to take control of my body. She was unusually forceful. For a moment, I couldn't hold her down and almost let her take control of my body back. Now you're trying to. That's right, my little cutie wanted to use your icy energy to end her own life. She even tried to drag me down with her. Sometimes these seemingly timid girls can be crazy. Fortunately, girls always have weaknesses, and I just so happened to know that. That's how I managed to take control of my body back." That was close. If I'd been just a moment later, I really might have been frozen to death. When Yi Zichen heard this, he froze. His eyes filled with disbelief as he looked at the Holy Maiden. Others might not know who the little cutie the Holy Maiden spoke of was, but he did. The one fighting over control of her body was Sun Yige. Chapter 13:11. Meddling in other people's business. Just what kind of experience had Sun Yige gone through to make her desire to die so intense? Yi Zichen closed his eyes. He could still recall back when they were still students, and how timid class monitor Sun Yige had been. When she talked to people, she didn't even dare look them in the eye. She couldn't even form a complete sentence with strangers. That's right. Given her timid personality, how much pressure must she have endured in the face of all this? What on earth did that Holy Maiden say? Li Hu's eyes widened in curiosity. Little cutie. Fighting for control of her body? The others heard the conversation as well. Quite a few of them sensed that something was amiss. Shui Mo and the others knit their brows and instinctively glanced at Yi Zichen. "Ah, I let it slip." Before long, the Holy Maiden covered her mouth with her hand, a hint of a smile in her eyes. From her expression, it was clear that she didn't care at all. In fact, it was entirely possible that she'd said it on purpose for the others to hear. She blinked, then twisted her neck. Her deep purple eyes flashed with light as she looked at Su Lu. "Let's forget about that little incident. Let's continue." "No problem." Su Lu's face was expressionless. Her entire being radiated an aura of indifference. "It just so happens that I didn't have much fun just now. I really do want to know if the Demon King's reincarnated Holy Maiden is as invincible as everyone says." She released her aura of frost. When the icy white chi appeared, the divine race, demon race, and demon race all retreated subconsciously. They'd seen it for themselves just how terrifying it was. Even the plaza, which had just been sealed in ice, had yet to break free. Again? Li Hu grinned. His mouth was so wide you could fit a fist inside. He took a few steps back, and couldn't help but feel speechless. "Then don't we have to go through all this trouble again? Is the Divine Martial Academy going to be fine or not? Even now, no one cares about this. It's almost night, yet the lot-drawing ceremony is still going on." Although he complained, his body was honest. As he spoke, he had already retreated more than 100 meters away. The rest of the people also retreated in a hurry. "Where's squad leader Yi?" As they retreated, the Su brothers of the navigators looked at the people around them and could not help but speak. The retreating members of the societies stopped, and then they saw, "All of you, stop." Yi Zichen's gaze was solemn as he roared and appeared between Su Luer and the Holy Maiden. When she saw him, Su Luer furrowed her brows and slowed down her release of frost energy. "Get out of my way." Her tone was so forceful that if Yi Zichen didn't leave, she would attack him. "Sister Luer, don't be angry. Can you retract your cold breath? I'm not a super expert like you. I can't withstand this cold breath." Yi Zichen laughed mischievously, but Su Luer was expressionless. She didn't even retract her cold aura. As she got closer, Yi Zichen finally realized just how terrifying her aura was. On his way here, he donned the swirling flash armor and used his divine power to set up several layers of defense around him. Even so, as he stood next to Su Luer, he could still feel the bone-chilling cold. Furthermore, this was only Su Luer's charging phase. It was hard to imagine just how strong her cold breath was when the 9 tornadoes had appeared in the sky. Even then, the Holy Maiden had been able to ignore it. It was clear. Her cultivation was unfathomably deep. The cold breath gradually penetrated Yi Zichen's defenses and seeped into his body. His blood flow slowed down under the attack of the cold air, and his body gradually stiffened. Sister Luer. Even speaking was a bit difficult, but Su Luer's expression was as cold as ever. Get out of my way, Sister Luer. At that moment, Su Yan's frantic voice rang out in the distance. Su Luer, who had her back to Su Yan, sighed inexplicably. She looked at Yi Zichen meaningfully, then shook her head and retracted her cold breath. As the cold dispersed, Yi Zichen's condition improved somewhat. Thank you, Sister Luer. There's no need to thank me. If it weren't for me, even if you were sealed in ice, what would that have to do with me? Su Luer snorted coldly, then looked away from Yi Zichen. His relationship with his sister-in-law, Su Luer, was truly unfathomable. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Yi Zichen smiled sheepishly and rubbed his nose. When he looked back at the Holy Maiden, he'd already suppressed his emotions. The Holy Maiden. Compared to Su Luer, the Holy Maiden was much friendlier to Yi Zichen. She narrowed her eyes and retracted her aura. Her deep purple eyes flashed with a hint of a smile as she tilted her head and waved at him in a friendly manner. Hello. We meet again so soon. By again, she was naturally referring to their last encounter in the lower realms. Back then, she'd begged Yi Zichen to let the demons go. Can you, for my sake, just let this go? Asked Yi Zichen in a low voice. Of course not. I didn't want to bicker with them at first. It was the Fox race's queen who kept insisting that our demon race's demon generals apologize. I'm not an unreasonable person. If you were an ordinary demon, I'd let it go. A demon general represents the face of the entire demon race. If a demon general apologizes, doesn't that make us seem weaker than the Yao? I definitely can't agree to it, don't you think so? The Holy Maiden smiled warmly. Her words were reasonable. Who cares if you're a demon general or not? You beat up one of our Yao. Are we just going to let this go? Snorted Su Luer. If you beat him, then you beat him up. All I can say is that you Yao are too weak. If you don't like it, then let him fight back. If he gets bullied, he goes looking for his family elder. Are all Yao like this? Sneered the Holy Maiden. Can you shut up? Said Yi Zichen awkwardly. To tell the truth, you really shouldn't get involved. The Holy Maiden, who'd been smiling at Yi Zichen all this time, suddenly darkened. There are plenty of people with relatively high cultivations here, but why hasn't anyone gotten involved? Just now, the Fox Queen and I caused quite a ruckus. Did you see anyone step forward to stop us? They don't want to get involved in this mess. You clearly could have stayed out of it, so why did you insist on sticking your head in? Do you think you have the right or the ability to resolve this? Of course I don't have the right. Yi Zichen was well aware of his status. He didn't have a divine domain, so he wasn't a divine general. He was just a student from Skyspan Academy who'd come here to compete. How could he possibly have the right to interfere in the conflict between the Fox Queen and the Holy Maiden? But, Chapter 13:12. His identity exposed. Yi Zichen couldn't care less about the demon's Holy Maiden. He couldn't care less about the Fox Queen either. But this involved Sun Yige. Even though he knew he couldn't do anything about it, he had to intervene. The reason? He couldn't imagine. But he wanted to. The Holy Maiden wasn't particularly surprised by Yi Zichen's words. She pursed her lips and looked silently at Yi Zichen with her purple eyes. She looked into his fearless eyes. What are you trying to say? Just say it. I want you to let Sun Yaij go, said Yi Zichen forcefully. The holy maiden stared fixedly at Yi Zichen's serious expression, as if trying to determine whether or not he was joking. She waited until she was sure that Yi Zichen wasn't joking. He really did want her to let Sun Yaij go. Pfft! She couldn't help but laugh. It was as if she'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. She shook her head repeatedly and smiled. You want me to let Sun Yaij go? Don't tell me you know about our relationship? Let her go. The holy maiden didn't say anything else. She simply shook her head and chuckled, then looked at Yi Zichen in bewilderment. As far as she was concerned, Yi Zichen should be a rational, reserved, and mature person. At the very least, he shouldn't be like this, a guy who talked in his sleep. What exactly was he thinking? How could he possibly say something like that? Let Sun Yaij go. She simply found the idea hilarious. I'm not particularly clear about your previous relationship, but I have a rough idea. In the face of the holy maiden's expression, Yi Zichen remained unmoved. His expression was serious. You and her should be two separate souls residing in the same body. In the modern realm's terms, you're in a rent-sharing relationship. Since you're two separate souls, you can have Sun Yaij's soul move out, can't you? I can convince her to give you this body. I'll reconstruct a new one for her. You've known Sun Yaij for so long, you should know what kind of person she is. If you still have the slightest bit of mercy in your heart, can you let her go? This way, you won't have to fight for control of the body in the future, and you won't have to worry about her suddenly wanting to take control of the body when you fight with someone in the future, putting you in danger. Why not? As soon as the holy maiden said that Sun Yaij wanted to die, Yi Zichen decided what he was going to do next. He couldn't let Sun Yaij go on like this. Rather than staying in this shell and fighting back and forth for the body, Chu Feng didn't dare to let Sun Yaij continue like this. He might as well just split her soul. Even if she became an ordinary person like she was in the modern realm, under Yi Zichen's protection, she'd still be able to survive in a world where strength reigned supreme. That's not bad. It's reasonable. The holy maiden nodded repeatedly, then her expression darkened. But I refuse. The relationship between us isn't as simple as you think. I advise you to stop worrying. Don't meddle in our affairs, because doing so will make me think that you're very ignorant. Her purple eyes flashed with sharp light. Although she was still smiling, her smile was enough to make one shudder. She stretched lazily, revealing her graceful figure. But it's not impossible. If you give me the Xianyuan sword and Yao Sealing Pagoda, I might agree to your request to split Sun Yaij's soul. The Xianyuan sword, the Yao Sealing Pagoda, the rulers of the Yao, God and demon realms all looked at Yi Zichen. If they hadn't heard wrong, they glanced at each other, then gave up on their opponents and flew towards Yi Zichen. Stop them. The instant they moved, the rulers of the God race took action as well. Instantly, the sky rumbled without end. However, none of the demons, Yao, or demons paid any attention to what was happening above. Their minds were filled with the holy maiden's words. The Xianyuan sword and the Yao Sealing Pagoda. These two peerless divine artifacts were actually on Yi Zichen. So the sword my father told me to give him was the Xianyuan sword. Xue Mo was stunned despite herself. Also, those Yao experts weren't followers, but Yao from the Yao Sealing Pagoda. Brother Yi actually has the Xianyuan sword and the Yao Sealing Pagoda? I'm not hallucinating, am I? Murong Xue's eyes brimmed with astonishment. Jiang Wei knit his brows and looked at Yi Zichen. That guy actually has the Xianyuan sword and the Yao Sealing Pagoda. Lu Jing's eyes flashed with astonishment, but for some reason, she had the vague feeling that Yi Zichen had the Xianyuan sword. She knew this. The Xianyuan sword and the Yao Sealing Pagoda. The Grizzly Bear Society's Pang Zheng and Di Long were solemn. In short, the holy maiden's words caused a huge uproar. As soon as she said this, Yi Zichen froze. You. Unbeknownst to him, the holy maiden who had spoken was stunned as well. This time, she wasn't faking it. She really was stunned. In truth, she hadn't planned on saying all this. She'd wanted to transmit it to him. She furrowed her brows and sensed the intense collisions in the sky. She also sensed the surrounding clansmen of the three realms looking at Yi Zichen with all sorts of emotions. Forget it, I'll just say it. Before long, the holy maiden chuckled once more, then tilted her head and grinned at Yi Zichen. Her gaze seemed to say, "What are you going to do about it, you poor bastard?" Yi Zichen's eyes reddened. He never would have guessed that the Xianyuan sword and Yaoxiling pagoda would be made public like this. Furthermore, every major faction in the three realms knew about them. "You have the Yaoxiling pagoda?" Su Lu was astonished, but Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head. He didn't want to admit it, but now wasn't the time to make it public. "Big brother Zichen." "Yi Zichen." "Big sister Luer, look at Yi Zichen." At that moment, three cries of alarm rang out in the distance. While the crowd was still focused on Yi Zichen, a black shadow darted through the crowd, rapidly approaching Yi Zichen. "The Xianyuan sword and Yaoxiling pagoda belong to us demons." A cold laugh sounded out from behind Yi Zichen. At the same time, Yi Zichen also saw a dagger with a cold glint appear behind him from the corner of his eye. "Stay your hand!" roared the holy maiden. Su Luer only noticed the black shadow after hearing Su Yan's shout. "You're seeking death."